There, we're live. Hi, everybody. Just getting the headphones on, just getting things ready for the live stream. Thanks for being here. I need to pop open the chat. Hello, chat room. We can pause this. Let's pop this out. Kind of see what I do here in the beginnings of this. We'll get stream health so we know what's going on. Hi, everybody. Let's check recordings. We are recording down here. I'm recording over here. That looks good. Cameras look all right. They look okay. They look somewhat ready to go. I think we're in good shape. I think we are in fine condition with that. Let's see how the stream is going. We got some viewers. Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome to the show. Oh, hello, Canada. Welcome. Hope things are going well up there. We have some family on the east and western parts, actually central parts. We have family all over Canada. So we hear from the folks up there from time to time. We are in constant communication. So it's nice for you to check in as well. We've got the Security Plus. This is Security Plus study group, everybody. I mean, this isn't the study group. This is the pre-show for the study group. We'll say that. So we get there. Hello, New York City and Scotland and London and India and Singapore, Palestine, and whoever else would like, Caribbean, and whoever else would like to check in. Got a little bit of everything going on. St. Vincent, nice. Good to see you again. Texas is here. Hello, Texas. The interesting part, I think Scotland was the last big trip I was able to take before everything kind of shut down. That was a great trip. Hello, Tampa, New York, Tennessee. Illinois is here. Ecuador. Hola. We've got lots of folks checking in from all over the place. This is one of those nice parts about doing this is I can just kind of turn on the camera and hear from Tennessee and Israel and Michigan and Charlotte, New York, and more of this and more of the Caribbean and more of Dallas, Texas, and more of New Mexico and India. I love it. Love it, love it. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for being here. I got a burning question about the pipeline ransom. I don't know if there's much that we even know at this point. We know just what they've told us, which is not very much right now. And what we think it is. I guess we'll know a lot more later on. But that whole thing is just an interesting thing happening there. There's I-75-85 in Atlanta Metro. Welcome. Monterey, thank you for being here. Fort Bragg, welcome. The good part is they were able to get the pipeline, continuing to go. They got it back up and running. I don't think the pipeline was ever down. I think they took it down out of a just concern that there would be a problem with the industrial equipment, or maybe they did have a problem. We don't know. We don't know yet. There's not enough information in. We'll hear more maybe when this is all over with. What we do know are the results of what it was, what happened with Dark Side, and or what didn't happen. So very interesting. And of course, all the dumb articles that come out afterwards. I have that working theory that some of you have heard before, that if you ever read anything in an article, I guess I could put maybe there's a tweak to that theory. Maybe that is not written by a security online or security periodical, but anybody else gets it wrong every time. And this was another example of that. Is half the things I was reading weren't accurate at all. They were making up things because people who write, people who are journalists for these things are journalists. They're not technical people. They're not cybersecurity experts. So, they try to get, and then they try to get it across to people in a way that they think would be explained to me like I'm 5. And in the conversation and then the translation and everything that happens during that process, it ends up being just wrong. Or it's an article just written for click me, which isn't any good either. That's the way it goes. All right, presentation looks good. I think we're in good shape here. I think we are. We're going to find out. How can this be used towards your continuing education unit credit? You can earn 1 hour of a webinar category continuing education unit credit for watching. Sometime in this first hour, I will explain how you can do that. I think most people are not collecting CEUs anymore. I think most people are just doing the Cert Master CE and renewing in a few hours, and they're done with it. It's just it's a lot easier. It's slightly more expensive. I think instead of $150 to renew, it's $200, or maybe it's an extra $50 or an extra $75. There's an extra premium on top of it, but you're done in a few hours. That's the part that's crazy. So that's the way it goes. 4 minutes to go. 4 minutes, and this is not the show. For those of you tuning in for the first time, this is not it. You will eventually see me on the screen. I will be talking to you. But this is the pre-show. We'll start here in just a few minutes. Absolutely get this going. Do not worry. We will make sure we get all that happening. So hopefully it's been good in everybody else's world. It's kind of a crazy world. Let's see how we're doing here. 20 plus years of web design. You want to get started in networking, which is great because networking is kind of the foundation of everything in IT. And you sort of have a jump on a little bit of that, I would think. Network Plus is a great first certification for networking. Although people who are hiring don't generally hire people who are just Network Plus certified. They're usually hiring A plus, and then eventually you're working into a networking role. So that's it. That's sort of the ideas behind it. Is making that happen. So we'll see. We will see how it goes. Is there much difference between the 501 and the 601? There's a remarkable difference. There is a ridiculous difference. Only half of the 501 information was brought forward into the 601, and after that, the 601 was expanded another 30% in size. So it's a massively large, much larger, a third larger than the previous version, and of the information that's in there, less than half of it is from the old exam. So yes, you do not, I'll explain this at the beginning, is you would not want to study for the 501 and then go in and take the 601 exam. That would just be crazy. That would be a waste of your money because you would fail. That would not be good. Same thing, you don't want to study for the 601 and then go in and take the 501. Don't mix and match. Never, never mix and match. There's always enough difference in the versions that you would fail. Not fail, but you would do very poorly. It's not guaranteed fail, but you're setting yourself up for failure if you do that. So there you go. That's what it is. If you've been studying for the 501 for 3 months, you have the test in July. Should you wait to take the 601? No, take the 501, please, quickly. 501 doesn't retire until July 31st. So keep studying. You've been studying for 3 months. The 601 is so different. It's like starting over. Don't do that. What parts of the 501 go on to the 601? Well, for that, you will have to go and figure it out. You'll have to go and look at the exam objectives for both. There is a lot of things that have been taken off. There's a number of things that have been added too. It's a big mix of things. It's a lot that's different. So we'll see. We'll see how this goes as we step through it. Yeah, if you're studying for the 601, just keep studying for the 601. But if you've spent 3 months studying for the 501, why would you start over? If you bought the 601 notes, will they help with the 501? No, they will help with the 601. Now I think you folks are just messing with me. That's what this is. Now you're just causing problems. Let's see if I can start my keynote. Let's see if I can get a green light. I do. That looks good. This looks good. The clock is getting close to the top of the hour, and there it is. It is time. Is there complete study material for the 601 on my site? There absolutely is, and why wouldn't you look at that? That's where you should be. Let's get things started, everybody. Let's see if that's the right button. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2021 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. This is our 601. That is the SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. We're in this first hour. I will ask you questions that come directly from the SY0-601 exam objectives. And you, as you are here online and live, will see how well you remember all of these things. It should be interesting to see how this goes. We got plenty to go through. I have questions for everybody. There's a lot to pour through. The way that you can participate if you are watching this live is you can pop open a new browser window and go to this link, professormesser.com/QA. That's the link you want to go to, professormesser.com/QA. And it is quite remarkable what is waiting for you there. There is a message, a question waiting for you. If you put that in right, you'll see it. It's there. Now, there's also an app you can get for this. The app is the Socrative student app, because we use this service called Socrative to do this interactive Q&A. It's the Socrative student app. They will ask you for a room name if you use that app. That room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSORMESSER. So make sure you are up to date with those. And if you do all of that right, there's a question waiting for you. And the question says, which of the following would be most associated with AIS? Would that be Sticks and Taxi, zero-day attacks, syslog, data exfiltration, or an encrypted tunnel? Which of the following would be most associated with AIS? Is it Sticks and Taxi, zero-day attacks, syslog, data exfiltration, or encrypted tunnel? Now, if you think you know the answer, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to the link that's on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock that in, and we'll come back to that question in just a moment. Well, thanks for being here, everybody. We like to do one of these study groups at least once every month, and this is our monthly Security Plus study group. We have other study groups that we do throughout the month for A Plus and Network Plus and other things as well. We have plenty to go through. There's also, of course, lots of videos you can look at. If you're taking your SY0-601, we have a full and complete video course available for you to watch for free on my YouTube channel. No registration required. There's nothing held back. There's no paywall. There's nothing you need to do. Just go out to YouTube and watch it. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube. I also have a weekly Security Plus pop quiz question I post to Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. And of course, I have the Instagram option as well if you like the Instagrams. So that's always good as well. There's plenty to step through with these. And if you are someone who is working through your certification for Security Plus, you'll notice right now that there are 2 exams that you could choose from. Now, you only need to take one of these. You could choose the SY0-501, or you could choose the SY0-601. The SY0-501 was released in October of 2017. It retires at the end of July. So as we are here on May the 19th. So you've got June, you got about less than 2.5 months to study and pass that exam. Now, if you've already been studying for the 501, keep studying for the 501. Take that exam. It's much smaller, therefore much easier to pass. So you do want to probably take the 501. It's going to be an easier deal for you. The certification, as soon as you pass it, is good for 3 years, even though they're retiring the questions on July 31st. Your certification, as long as you pass that 501, is good for 3 years. They could change the exam every day. You'd still be certified for 3 years. That's good to know. There's a newer version of this exam. They update the exam about every 3 years. So the latest version of the Security Plus is the SY0-601. It was released in November, which means it will probably retire somewhere around May of 2024. So if you're studying for the 601, you have plenty of time before you would ever run into that. But if you're watching this on a replay and you're getting close to May of 2024, you may want to have a look at that. Make sure that you're up to date with everything you would need to know. Now, regardless of which exam you choose, it's practically identical. Well, let me first say, before we go past this, the 601 is a dramatically different exam. I have a video on my YouTube channel that is why you should not wait for the SY0-601 exam. I did this video well before the 601 was released. But so much has changed. More than half of the exam is different. They only pulled half of the information from the 501 and then increased the size of the 601 by 30%. So very little of the 601 seems to to look like the 501. It's about a half and half kind of thing, a little bit less, but we'll say half and half just to make it easy to say. So dramatically different. That means do not use 501 study materials if you're planning to take the 601 exam. Do not use 601 study materials if you are planning to take the 501 exam. Make sure that your study materials match the version of the exam that you're planning to take. That's an important consideration. Make sure the study materials that you are using are exactly the same version as the exam you are taking. Otherwise, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage right out of the gate. Why would you do that? The exam itself, whether you take the 501 or 601, is a single exam you have to pass, 90 minutes in length. You could get a maximum of 90 questions at a passing score of 750 on a scale from 100 to 900, and it's a combination of multiple choice and performance-based questions. And as Matt in the chat room, who has also donated $4.99 in the super chat, thank you for your donation, says, I passed the Security Plus today. You took the 501. Congratulations. Did Network Plus and A Plus recently. Your videos and notes were essential. Thanks. Any plans to do CCNA? I got plans for a lot of things. I got lots of plans. Will I ever do the CCNA? I would love to do more CCNA. I had some study materials for the older version of the CCENT. It would be great to add on to those. But right now, we are focusing on getting all the security stuff out and being able to have all of those things there. So, Matt, congratulations on your 501 and your Network Plus and your A Plus. Congratulations for those. That is fantastic. I always like to hear those great stories. And that's a hard one to get through. The Security Plus is a hard exam. The 501 is a hard exam. 601 is a hard exam as well. So it's always good to be able to have those there. There is also my 501 and 601 course are complete and available on the website, so it doesn't matter which one you're studying for. I have a study course for you. The videos are out there and available for you. In fact, if you wanted to get everything I have for the 601, I have bundled it all into one single success bundle. This comes with my course notes and my exam hacks and my study group Q&A, all the videos. You can download everything that's in the video. You can download MP3 versions of this. It's all out there. So plenty to be able to look through. You can find that at professormesser.com/601SB. So that would help you, of course, if you're planning to do anything with the 601 exam. There is a video replay version of this available immediately afterwards on the Professor Messer website and on YouTube. You can, of course, find all of that. There is also a podcast version, an audio version of this available at professormesser.com/podcast. There's also links there to A Plus and Network Plus and all of my other study groups as well. A great way to have these automatically show up on your mobile device. You can listen as you're traveling, as you're working out. Just another way to listen in to the study groups. About a day later, after we finish this live event, you'll notice that the YouTube video description will have timestamps next to it. Those timestamps have the information about what we did and when we did it, and we're able to put those on there thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this in the replay. Everybody say hi to Lori. Lori is going through and putting timestamps for all of this. She's watching it at 2x speed, trying to get through the whole thing, trying to figure out when the timestamps are. She puts everything in there. So you've got plenty to go through. Hopefully that will help you as you're looking at this. You can find that at professormesser.com/YouTube. I will also mention, for those of you that are working on your Security Plus exam, a number of you have noticed on the Pearson VUE website, it costs a lot to purchase a Security Plus voucher. It's like $370 here in the U.S. Why wouldn't you buy it for less? And you can do that on the Professor Messer website, where I have discounted vouchers already on my site. You don't need a voucher code. You don't need a coupon. You don't need to play any of those games. It's just discounted for everybody. Everybody gets a discounted voucher. You get a discounted voucher, and you get a discounted voucher, and you get a discounted voucher. Just go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and you'll be able to download or at least see what the options are for A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus. I'll probably put some more on there as well, because a lot of you have said you're taking other exams. You would also like some discounted vouchers for those. So maybe I'll add some others this weekend to the list. But, of course, you can get a discounted voucher at a lot of places, perhaps not as discounted as mine are, but I also wanted to add a little bit more to it. So if you purchase a voucher from my site, you also get my Exam Hacks ebook. This is a set of 14 or so life hacks that will help you as you're planning to take the exam. It gives you some hacks you can use while you are taking a CompTIA exam, things that might give you a few extra points, and things you can do afterwards if you don't happen to do as well as you might have hoped. All available there, and you can find it at professormesser.com/vouchers. These are to take the exams only. They do not apply currently to the CertMaster or any of the other products on the CompTIA website. That is all about CompTIA in those regards. Well, let's talk about that question we saw earlier, which was, which of the following would be most associated with AIS? And I had a list here that you could look through. That list said stick syntactic, zero-day attacks, syslog, data exfiltration, or encrypted tunnel. And if we look at the results, we can see that 50% of you say sticks and taxi. It doesn't even make sense. What is that? What is a sticks and taxi? We'll find out in a moment, won't we? Because 18% said syslog, 15% said data exfiltration, 15% said encrypted tunnel, practically a three-way tie for second. And then way back in third place, 3% said zero-day attack. So if you see AIS, it's referring to automated indicator sharing, which is just another acronym that we needed. We did not have enough acronyms in information technology, so we added a few more. This one, automated indicator sharing, is talking about how we can share threat information automatically, automate it, have it move between different locations, be able to send it to somebody else. And we do that through a set of standards. The standard for the actual information that we are sending is in a structure called STIX, which is Structured Threat Information Expression. I guess STIE wouldn't have worked. We had to put the X in there. The way that you send this STIX data, well, you put it in a taxi, of course. Aren't we cute and adorable? It is the trusted automated exchange of indicator information. Taxi. I can't even remember the names of everything. You just get used to saying sticks and taxi that you never remember what the sticks and taxi means. So that might help a little bit. If you go to your exam, you're trying to figure out what all of this AIS stuff is about. Well, it's about sticks and taxi. And if you answered A, sticks and taxi, 52% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done on that multiple choice-based question. One of the things that many of you may not even be aware of is at the beginning of your exam, you will get a handful of questions that are not multiple choice-based questions. They are performance-based questions. They're questions that could ask you to perform a function at a command line. They might present you with a drag and drop, maybe a graphical view. Maybe you have to put things in a particular order. Maybe it's a matching question, but it's anything but a multiple choice question. So one of the things that we do on every one of our study groups is the very first new question of the month is always a performance-based question. So I've created for you a matching question, this matching question in a similar style to what we have traditionally seen on the Security Plus exam. This particular question has, we'll just jump right into it. I want you to do a matching question which matches the attack with the description. This is something you will have to put in on your side. You can almost see everything that's on the screen. So let me tell you what we've got here is on the left side, we have 4 attacks. We have spam, watering hole, smishing, and harvesting. Those are 4 technologies / attack types. And then I have 6 different descriptions. So 2 of these are going to be left over at the end. This makes it a little bit harder, doesn't it? So the first one is a malicious website script uploads a password file to the attacker. Description B is a text message provides a link for tracking a shipment. Description C is an attacker walks behind an employee through the front door. Description D is an unsolicited email promotes a cryptocurrency. Description E is content from fake users is posted to social media. And the last one is a credit card processor is infected with malware. Now, those are the 6 descriptions. Obviously, we're only going to use 4 of those. So if you happen to know what the last 2 are, you can maybe put those in for a little bonus. Get bonus points. You don't usually get bonus points on your exam, but I'll give out some bonus points if you get it right. If you want to answer this, please don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that is right there on your screen. Go to that link and lock in your answer. If you think they're already in order, Just put in 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, and hit enter. You're done. See how easy that was? That's not the answer, by the way, but at least you've got some things to work through. If you're ever trying to figure all of this out, as you're probably aware on the 501 and the 601, lots of attack types, lots of technologies you need to know about, but you need to know more than just the description of the attack type. You need to understand how to recognize that attack type. So that's what this is about, is us trying to recognize what that happens to be. Now, as people in the chat room are mentioning, what if you get 3 of them, but not the 4th? Do you get partial credit? Well, CompTIA has told us on their website that they could possibly give you partial credit, or maybe they won't. That's not a word-for-word quote from the website, but that's a good paraphrase of what they put on their website, which is there may be times when they do provide partial credit. There are other times when they don't. So I guess we can take away from this that if they give partial credit, this would be a really good time to do it. Don't you think this would be a perfect type of question to give partial credit to? I get partial credit, but what good does that do for anybody? That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do. It's what CompTIA does. But that's the thing. We just don't know. There's no way to know. CompTIA doesn't share their grading mechanisms with us. We will never know if that's the case. The only thing I can say is do the best you can. And at the end of it, it'll work out. That's all I can really say. That's all I know. Because I guess I could say more, but at this point, it's coming from a point where it's behind a wall, it's behind a screen. We don't know what happens back there. We just know that if we do well enough in our exam, we'll be able to do this. So we'll see. Let's see how you did with this. Let's match these attacks with these descriptions, and let's start with spam. Spam should be an attack most of us probably recognize. So if you receive an unsolicited email promoting a cryptocurrency, this would be the wrong day to promote that, wouldn't it? This would be a bad day to promote cryptocurrencies. But those are the types of emails that certainly look, feel, and act like spam. You didn't ask for this email. You didn't subscribe to something that gave you this email. It was completely unsolicited. It just showed up in your email, and it was trying to sell you something. So promoting a cryptocurrency is a very good example of spam, especially since it was sent by email. That's your link there. Unsolicited and email equals spam. Second on our list is a watering hole. Watering hole. That is where you would have everybody from many places coming to a central point to become, in this particular case, infected. And a good example of that is a credit card processor. If you can infect the credit card processor, everybody who's trying to get approvals for credit card transactions is all coming to the credit card processor. The credit card processor is the watering hole. We're all coming to the watering hole to try to get that approval. If they can infect the watering hole, then everybody who shows up goes away infected. So it's a great way to get everyone with that infection. A credit card processor infected with malware certainly speaks to a watering hole. It's the only answer in these descriptions that I gave that made any sense whatsoever. So that's a very good example of getting everyone infected from the watering hole. You answered 2 watering holes. F, a credit card processor is infected with malware. Third on our list, smishing. Smishing. Smishing, sort of like phishing, except with SMS, of course. It's with a text message, which means the answer would be B. A text message provides a link for tracking a shipment. Have we all gotten these at this point? I think we have. I think we've all gotten an email that says, you're a Federal Express. They even say Federal Express. Your FedEx package, your UPS package, your package from Amazon is delayed. That happens to me all the time. Well, I didn't ask for any text messages, and if you were to click the link in the text message, it would ultimately take you to probably a phishing site asking you to put in your Amazon ID, but it's not Amazon. It just looks like Amazon. Always be very careful of links that you get in text messages, just as you get links in emails. You should also be very careful there as well. Any link, just be careful of any link. There, we should just say it that way. And last on the list was harvesting. Harvesting is when a malicious website script, or an example of harvesting is when a malicious website script uploads a password file to the attacker. So if on your machine, whenever you go to a site, you say, you log in, it says, would you like to save your password? Well, of course I do. I don't want to have to type that in every time. So you save it in your browser. Well, it's saved somewhere. And although it's saved in very often that's saved in a protected form, in an encrypted / password protected form, bad guys can still go through it and try to do some brute force. So that's a good example of grabbing a password file, grabbing information about people's authentication, and pulling it off and maybe taking it somewhere else to perform some processing. That is a good way to do it, and that is certainly considered harvesting, as they are going out and trying to harvest all of those username and passwords. Now, I mentioned we would have 2 left over at the end of this. The 2 that we have left over is C, an attacker walks behind an employee through the front door, and E, content from fake users is posted to social media. So I said bonus points if we can figure out what these things are. And if we go to C, an attacker walking behind an employee through the front door, that's not good. That's tailgating. So that would be something we always have to look out for. If you're ever working in an environment like this, there's usually signs right there by the door that says 1 person at a time. Do not allow tailgating. Don't allow somebody to come through when you open that door. In fact, there's many places I have worked where you had to, maybe 10 people behind you, you badge in, you open the door, you go inside, you close the door, and then the next person can do that. Sort of a self-managed access control vestibule. Did I use the right terms? I think I did. That is one that you do have to watch for, and certainly an easy way for bad guys to get into your facility. And lastly, content from fake users posted to social media is an influence campaign. This happens all the time. Once you start looking for it, you can find it very, very, very easily. If you try to keep an open mind, try to be objective about what you're looking at online, you look at something, you think, wait a second, I think that's probably an influence campaign. So that's what you would run into, is an influence campaign. Content from fake users posted to social media is one aspect, just one tiny piece of the entire influence campaign. And I talk about all of those in my video about influence campaigns. I have videos for all of these, of course. You can step through all of those. Section 1.2 of the video series, I think, has everything you would need to know about those attack types. Hopefully you were able to match those up pretty good. I saw in the chat room some folks saying, I did pretty good. 2 out of 4, 4 out of 4, 1 out of 4. But the good part of this is if you get any of these wrong, this is a great opportunity. It's actually really good if you get these wrong. Kind of a bad thing to say, isn't it? But the idea is you're getting it wrong now so that you don't get it wrong in the exam. So that's what the good part about this happens to be, is you can, of course, get these right, get these wrong. But if you're learning something along the way, then we're doing pretty good. That's your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully that helped you as well. So let's now go back to our multiple choice-based questions. I have some available for you. The next question on our list is a question about WPA3, and it asks, which of the following is used to secure WPA3 PSK authentication? Would it be SAE, CCNP, WPS, TKIP, or CBC MAC? Which of the following is used to secure WPA3 PSK authentication? Is it SAE, CCNP, WPS, TKIP, or CBC MAC? If you think you know the answer, lock it in at professormesser.com/QA. Please do not put answers in the chat room. Please do not put any hints in the chat room. We will figure it out as we go through all of this. So this is one where if you're ever going through the process of working with wireless networks and trying to kind of break down the differences and the how they would operate, there are nuances, and this nuance is an important one. So make sure you're familiar with all of these different options. For those of you working on Security Plus, this could be your very first certification exam. Very often people coming to my website, Security Plus is often the very first one because employers, especially for the U.S. federal government, love for you to have your Security Plus as a primary. So that's why you'll see a lot of people taking and trying to pass that Security Plus for a job either with the federal government or one that works with the federal government, especially in the Northeast United States. Very, very common to see that particular thing. That's why we have a lot of emphasis on Security Plus on my site. Very, very important. Have I ever got a virus? I'm assuming you mean computer virus. Yep. of course, throughout my career, I have both gotten viruses and helped to remove and clean up for many different viruses. Do you have a family? You've gotten a virus. That's how that works for most of those. Let's see how well you know this wireless security and the WPA3 PSK, whatever that is. We'll figure this out in just a moment. The question again was, which of the following is used to secure WPA3 PSK authentication? Is it SAE, CCNP, WPS, TKIP, or CBC MAC? If we look at our results, we're all over the place. 34% of us say TKIP is what is used to secure WPA3 PSK. 24% said SAE. A tie for third place between CCNP and WPS with 17% apiece. And lastly, at 7% is CBC MAC. Well, the WPA3 changes things quite a bit. WPA3 is, well, it's obviously different than WPA2. It's an upgrade to WPA2. And one of the things that we changed with WPA3 is the authentication process, especially the authentication process with pre-shared keys, or PSK. Pre-shared keys is when you set up a single passcode or password for your wireless network, and anybody who comes to your house, you say, oh, you need the password to get in? The password is, and you give them the password to be able to make that happen. So this is where you would make this change to WPA3 changes the way we do this authentication. It is able to set up a session key between two devices without actually sending that key across the network. So there's an issue with WPA2 that there's a handshake that takes place back and forth. And if you can grab the hash from that handshake, you can then perform an offline brute force attack from that hash. Well, let's remove that hash from the design completely and not even send a handshake. Don't send any hashes. There's no opportunity for brute force because we have completely changed how WPA3 works. We've effectively added forward secrecy to WPA3. And so now we don't have to worry about somebody performing this. The way that we're able to make that happen is through adding a new method of performing this authentication called a simultaneous authentication of equals, an SAE. Isn't that like oil? I think it is. This is sort of Diffie-Hellman-like. If it sounds like Diffie-Hellman, that's because this is sort of like Diffie-Hellman. It just has an extra component in there for authentication on both sides so that you know the person that you're exchanging the key with really is the person that you were intending to exchange this key with. That way nobody can sit in the middle and do an on-path attack. Everybody would then get a different session key. Even if they're all using the same pre-shared key, everybody gets a different session key. This makes it much stronger. It's part of the standard itself. If you hear somebody saying, oh, that's dragonfly. Yes, that is. But dragonfly is not a good term to use. That's just sort of something we use to kind of describe it in a very easy to remember way. But the official, more technical term for this is the simultaneous authentication of equals, SAE. I'm glad we're using abbreviations in this case, which means in our answer, SAE is the correct answer. If you answered A, 23% of you got that one correct. That is the one that you would have there. It would not be TKIP. TKIP used with older types of wireless standards and in different ways. And in many ways, TKIP is one you would not use because there are some vulnerabilities associated with TKIP. Another good reason to upgrade to WPA3. And having that capability would not be CCNP. That's what we have in WPA2. Would not be WPS, which is a method of authenticating that is not using pre-shared keys, but instead using usually pins to be able to do that. And then CBC MAC is also not a method. It's a block method and an authentication that we would have. Not only 7% of you chose that, but not something that you would use with WPA3 PSK. So there's where I think it helps to know SAE, 23% of you, is absolutely correct with that. If you answered the simultaneous authentication of equals, it's all equal, then you got that one absolutely right. And it's a welcome thing to have for working in a wireless network these days. WPA3 adds a lot of new and useful features, and that is just one of them to be able to have that there. So let's also, now that you're kind of got familiar with our multiple choice based questions, let's do another one. I have another multiple choice based question which asks, which of these best describes authentication that is genuine with high confidence? Would that be hashing, integrity, counterintelligence, e-discovery, or non-repudiation? Which of these best describes authentication that is genuine with high confidence? Would it be hashing, integrity, counterintelligence, e-discovery, or non-repudiation? If you'd like to lock in your answer, do it. The link at the bottom of the screen, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room to have that there as well. This is also, if you're ever looking through the questions you would get on the Security Plus exam, these types of questions that don't give you a direct question answer. This is an unusual one where you're asked a very direct question with a very direct answer. But very often on the exam, what you end up finding is that the questions themselves are a little bit more involved, sometimes not as much. One of the things that I found to be a little bit different on the 601 is that the questions are not quite the tome, the diatribe, the ongoing paragraphs of information. They did sort of shrink down the questions to be much more concise, but still have them pretty difficult. They're still not trivia questions for the most part. Most of the time, the questions do require one or two steps to get through to get the final answer, or they're pulling in different ideas from different parts of the exam and putting them into a single question, which I think is a great way to do it. It's really testing you on what you really know about these technologies and maybe how sometimes they interact with each other. And that's, of course, what you find when you start working with security, is that that's exactly the scenario you run into. In fact, you usually run into security and networking sort of pushed into one big problem to solve. This is where, at least if you start getting into it and trying to figure out the details, that's one of the things that you will certainly find as you go through this. Is it wrong if you're taking the 501 tomorrow instead of the 601? No. If you've been studying for the 501, take it. It's much easier. Much easier exam to study for. Much shorter exam to study for. I think the difficulty level is comparable on the exam, but it will take you much less time to study for 501 than it would ever for the 601, and you get the same certification. You get exactly the same piece of paper at the end of it, whether you take the 501 or 601. So why not do the easier one? Take the 501. I think that makes more sense. If you do the A+ cert, will passing the 501 renew it? Passing a number of different exams will renew the A+, and that is one of them, certainly. So that will help you as you go through this. A number of you have worked on this, so let's see how you did with this one that asked, which of these best describes authentication that is genuine with high confidence? Is it hashing, integrity, counterintelligence, e-discovery, or non-repudiation? 41% of you say it's non-repudiation. 27% said hashing, 25% said integrity, which is pretty close to the same number. We'll call that a tie. And then way down here, counterintelligence 4%, e-discovery 1%. Practically no one answered that. If we go with the, not a majority, but at least a plurality of you said non-repudiation, 42% of you, I think we'll go with that at least and see if that's right. Is it right? Well, let's have a look. The answer is indeed non-repudiation. The difference between non-repudiation and other types of verification or authentication, really, of what's going on the other side, is that with non-repudiation, the person who is receiving this message knows that it really came from you. And in fact, anybody else who wanted to confirm that it really came from you could also confirm that. So you've got quite a bit to go through with non-repudiation. It is a very, very specific way to say it not only really came from this person, and we're very sure it came from this person, we also know that everything in here that they put into this message is exactly the way they put it. Very, very detailed with this. We call this genuine with high confidence because anybody could have sent this data, but everybody can check to really see where it came from. And that's why whenever we start breaking these out, that means that we really understand. Sometimes you'll see a similar type of authentication or integrity check using a message authentication code. And usually it's the two parties communicating that are able to confirm that the other person is who they say they are, which is still a very strong form of authentication. It's a very strong way to know it really came from the person, but only two people know about it. If you really want to expand that out so that anybody could check to see that it really came from that person, then you would use something like a digital signature, where you can publicly verify that the message that was received was really sent originally from the person we think. So that is the key, is not, and that's what we call it, non-repudiation. The person on the other end who sent this has no way to repudiate or deny that they sent this. They couldn't have digitally signed it, sent it to you, and then said, no, I didn't write that. That wasn't me who put that information there. Well, I have your digital signature here, and you're the only person in the universe who could have put a digital signature on this from your key, so therefore it had to come from you. So that's the beauty of non-repudiation. We really know that it came from that person. We have high confidence in that anybody can check on that. The answer there would be non-repudiation, answer E. Now, why would it be hashing? If you ever done hashing, you maybe take a file, you create a hash, you send that file to someone else, you can check the hash, and you've got a pretty good authentication for that file. You can see the integrity, at least, of the file. Not much authentication, but the integrity of the file is there. We at least know it was the same file that we started with. The problem is the hash itself. What if somebody in the middle of the conversation intercepted the conversation, put in their own file, changed the hash, and then sent it to you? Well, you're still getting the same message. Just the hash does match the file that was sent. Those are the challenges with this, being able to work through it. So hashing doesn't really help us from a knowing who sent this information, which is really the authentication part of it. It only helps with the integrity part of that. That's only part of what we're looking for. Certainly not genuine with high confidence. Integrity is what we were describing with the hash. It makes sense that most of you would have done a 50-50 on that. That's exactly what happened. Counterintelligence is when we can recognize that somebody's trying to get information about us, and we can, of course, either mitigate or get information about them, back and forth. Whenever we work through all of those different issues, counterintelligence doesn't have anything to do with authentication that is genuine with high confidence. And e-discovery is more of a legal term. If somebody needs to come in and have a look at your digital logs, they will probably go to a judge and say, we need to perform discovery, or in this particular case, e-discovery, to be able to gain access to those logs. More of a legal issue, and it has nothing to do with authentication that is genuine with high confidence. The only thing that fits into this, the one that does fit best, is non-repudiation. 44% of you chose that one, and that would be the right answer, non-repudiation. Let's do another one. I've got another multiple choice here. And this one asks, which of the following would be the best example of a detective security control? Would that be IPS, security policy, fence, hot site, or backup? Which of the following would be the best example of a detective security policy? Is it IPS? Why do I have security policy in here twice? Security policy, fence, what happened there? Hot site or backup? I guess the security policy, that could be a detective security control. IPS, security policy, fence, hot site, and backup. That's exactly what I meant to do. I just didn't realize it at this very moment in time. That's what I meant to do. That's what I get for just reading through and not thinking about what I'm doing. That is a perfectly reasonable answer to have in here. And it could be one of the best examples of a detective security policy. We'll know in a moment whether it was or not. Let's see if we do this. A lot of this you haven't gotten to yet. Can I go over more section one? Well, we go through each section one at a time. So section one will come back around eventually for those. Are there other methods than a digital signature that would guarantee non-repudiation? Digital signature is sort of the standard for non-repudiation. There's not many other ways that you could, beyond a doubt, know that a particular message came from a person, the message is unchanged, and anybody else in the world would be able to verify it. Digital signature is the way to go. There's really not a good, there's probably a few other ways to do it with a non-repudiation, but digital signature is certainly the easiest. I guess let's say you have someone doing a live stream, and they have a live stream of the person signing it. They have a paper, and the live stream can read what the person wrote, and then they sign it, and then they put that letter, they fold up the letter, they put a stamp on it, and then during the live stream, you take the letter all the way to the recipient, and then you have them open it up, and you have a full and uncut video of the entire process from beginning to end. That's non-repudiation, and anybody can watch it. So yeah, there are other ways to do it. Are there other better ways to do it? Probably not. And then, of course, you'd have everybody complaining, wait, they folded it up. They could have changed it while it was folded up. They could have done like a Mission Impossible thing and swapped it. Well, they could have. So that's one of those situations when you work through it. Which of the following would be the best example of a detective security control? Let's see how you did with this one. Would it be IPS, a security policy, a fence, a hot site, or a backup? 65% of you say an IPS would be a good example, the best example of a detective security control. 19% said a security policy would be. We've got 9% that said a fence. We've got 2% that had said hot site. We have 5% that said backup. Well, if we go into our control types, there's a lot of different control types we need to know for the exam. I'm going to bring up the slide I have on the preventive and detective control types. There's obviously many other control types that you need to know, but the detective control type has a number of interesting characteristics, one of which is that it may not actually prevent access. Just like a detective might be watching from across the street, watching everything you're doing. This could be technology that watches everything you're doing, but doesn't necessarily stop you from doing it. There is also, in detective, may identify and record perhaps intrusion attempts. Somebody tries to break in, the detective can call you and say, I've detected someone trying to break into your network. And this could be an alarm, an alert, a message, something that is sent to you that informs you of that happening. Great way to do it. So a good example of a detective mechanism, a detective control type, is something like a motion detector, like the one we have here. This motion detector is on, it looks like. The motion detector can wait for somebody to walk into the room and detect that someone is there. They're not stopping them from going through the room. They're not, maybe not even turning on lights or warning anybody of anything. They're just detecting that it happened. So later on you can look at, and of course, an intrusion detection system or intrusion prevention system is also a detective control type, among other types, because these types of mechanisms can fit into other categories as well. This is not an exclusive thing, but it certainly fits with what we were looking for. The 66% of you that said IPS, an intrusion prevention system, that certainly fits as a detective security control. And another type of security control that's on our list is a preventive security control. If you're taking the 501, it's a preventative security control, which, by the way, is exactly the same thing. It's like flammable and inflammable. It's exactly the same thing. The detective security control at IPS is both a detective security control and a preventive security control. It can be both. You can fit them into different categories. So IPS certainly fits here as a detective security control. A security policy is more of an administrative function. So it doesn't detect anything, just tells you what you should be doing or not doing on the network. Does not fit into a detective security control. A fence, more of a physical control, being able to stop someone from getting into this. That would be a preventive security control. There we have a fence right there. A door lock, security guard, a firewall. You're physically controlling access for all of those. You've got hot sites, which are not a security control. I guess maybe they could be a security control because you could be recovering from a break-in. So that recovery process, certainly an important security control to consider. Hot sites would fit there, as would a backup. So you have at least ways to recover if something happens to the network, to your systems, to your data. But the only one in this list that fits into the detective security control category is an intrusion prevention system. 67% of you chose that, and you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Well done with that. There's so much to know on this exam, isn't there? It's just massive. And being able to work through all of these, and whether you're working on detective security controls, preventive security controls, corrective security controls, you're trying to do any of these different security controls, all of those are incredibly important to know. And so one of the things is, of course, I've got all of this in my course. My 601 course is 177 videos. It is massive, over 21 hours of content. Not everyone has time to go through 21 hours of content and take notes from all of this. So what I've done is take everything in my course and put it into a set of notes. It is my SY0-601 course notes. Here they are on the screen. I'm just going to go through a few pages of this. 121 pages of course notes. So let's go to something that would be good to look at. Let me pick something from the big list of things since we were looking at all of these. How about, since we're talking about security controls, let's talk about cloud security controls. And it goes right to the section of the video that talks about cloud security controls. I've got other, you can also see some of the charts and some of the diagrams that I have in here from the exam. All the command line stuff is in here. For the attacks, if we go back to the attack types, you'll even see the attack types sort of graphically described as being able to have those there. Lots to view inside of the course notes, and they're a great summary. If you've read your book, you've watched the videos, but you need something that summarizes everything in one place, it would be my course notes. In fact, I have the physical version of them right here. You can both get digital and physical versions of them. The physical one costs a little bit more, but if you buy the physical one, I send you the physical in the mail, and you get the digital one for free, so you can download it immediately and start using it. Find out more about this at professormesser.com/601CN. That stands for 601 course notes. Or just go to the Professor Messer website, choose the link for the SY0-601 at the top of the page, and you'll find those course notes. It's a great way to help the site. It's a great way also to get some good study materials in return. I like to give you something for your money. I think that's a good way to do it. Have a look at that, see if that helps you. Maybe that can get you through that very big, that very massive, the biggest Security Plus exam that they've ever created, the SY0-601. Have a look at that at professormesser.com/601CN. Let's do another multiple choice question, shall we? I've got one. For those of you familiar with this, which of these would best describe a zip bomb? Which of these would best describe a zip bomb? Would it be directory traversal, a null pointer dereference, an API attack, a memory leak, or resource exhaustion? Which of these would best describe a zip bomb, directory traversal, null pointer dereference, an API attack, a memory leak, or resource exhaustion? Now, if you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. It's that link right there at the bottom of the page. Do I have a 601 Security Plus Practice Exams web-based version? Well, I have the PDF, which of course opens up in many web browsers. That's about as close as I will get. The Security Plus, oh, the practice exams. The practice exams PDF, which is also PDF flavor, not quite out yet, but working on it. We've gotten a lot done on the practice exams just in the last week. I'm so pleased with the way that's going. So you will see the 601 practice exams, I hope in the next month or so. I'm going to give myself a little bit more time, but I'm hoping over the next month or so, we will be able to release those. My marketing manager, Lori, is already doing some editing on the first exam right now. So that's how far along we are. We're doing very, very quickly on getting those practice exams out. It's not a web-based version. It's a PDF, just like my 501 practice exams is the way it works. That way, anybody can use it. You don't need to be connected to the internet. You don't need a web browser. It works on anybody's operating system. It works on your mobile devices. It works on your laptop. It works on your desktop. Works everywhere. The PDF just is much more accessible for everybody. So that's one that I think might help to have that there. So hopefully that can help you too as you go through your study process and trying to figure out what you're going to do. I realize the practice exams, there's something we really started releasing those just over a year ago. They're a relatively new product for us, but everybody loves them. So we're going as fast as we can. And by we, I'm the author, so I'm going as fast as I can. There's nobody else writing these. It's just me. So that's the real key is maybe working through finding the time to make sure I get all of these out as quickly as possible. And this all it just takes time for me to write them. But I'm in here at first thing in the morning. I'm in here till 10 or so at night writing this, just constantly. Whenever there's something where we're working on a product actively like this, it's just an all-day thing for months. So we're getting through there and figuring it out. We will make it happen. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asked, which of these would best describe a zip bomb? Would it be directory traversal, a null pointer dereference, an API attack, a memory leak, or resource exhaustion? Well, let's see how you did. Let's show the results. Click the right button here. 54%. We got a majority say it's resource exhaustion, which is how I feel right now. 16% said it's API attack. 14%, I'm fine. Directory traversal. 9% said null pointer dereference, and 8% said memory leak. 54% was pretty strong then. That was one of the biggest ones we saw coming through was all of this with the resource exhaustion. Well, first, I guess it would help if we knew what a zip bomb was. Let's get to that in a moment, because let's kind of break this down from a resource exhaustion perspective. As it sort of implies, this is a type of denial of service. You're taking a particular resource and you're using it all up. That's effectively it. So you're using up all the memory in a machine. You're using up all the bandwidth on a network, using something. And a very common way to do this is with what is called these days a zip bomb. This is a file that is 42 kilobytes in size, 42,000 bytes. This is a very small file. It's a very tiny zip file. This is the tiniest of zip files. I have word processing documents. Most of my word processing documents bigger than this zip bomb. Very, very small, this 42 kilobyte zip file. But when you uncompress it, you unzip it, it unzips to 4,500 terabytes. Now, I've got a very nice NAS in the other room where I have like 50 terabytes on it. And that has like years of video that I create. This is 4,500 terabytes. That is a big file to uncompress. That is effectively 4.5 petabytes. We don't even talk in those terms. Because this is, you can imagine sending somebody this in an email, easily sent as a zip file, and they unzip it, it will just simply eat away at all of their available disk space until it fills up. That's it. They're now completely full. Their hard drive is completely full trying to uncompress this zip file, crashes the operating system, won't reboot. It makes a mess. Just horrible. Now, because of that, if you have a look at, if you get your hands on one of these zip files, and I don't recommend you get your hands on one of these. It's useless. It's pointless to have this because you really can't do much with it anyway. But an antivirus, anti-malware on your system is going to identify it immediately as a zip bomb anyway. And it will not let that system, can't download it, you can't save it, can't run it. It won't work. So even sending it to somebody, it's not even cute anymore. It just gets sent that way. Another good example of resource exhaustion, since we're here, is a DHCP exhaustion. Somebody gets on a network, changes their MAC address, does a DHCP request, grabs an IP address, then changes their MAC address, does the same thing, then changes their MAC address and does the same thing until the entire pool of DHCP addresses is gone. That's it. That's DHCP starvation. That's a bad thing when that happens too. So resource exhaustion, a very specific and very painful denial of service attack. And in fact, a zip bomb does fit into that category of resource exhaustion. The 54% of you got that one absolutely right. Now, it would not be an API attack. An API attack is trying to find something, an opening with an API that would allow them to perform their own API queries, or perhaps even destroy or disrupt the API process. An API attack is not part of a zip bomb, however. Directory traversal is when somebody gets on usually a web server and they're able to move backwards outside of the scope of your web server directories by effectively using the ... command and moving out of a particular directory in the URL. That's a very common way to implement directory traversal. It is not does not have anything to do with a zip bomb, but it is a way that you could somehow get outside the scope of a web server that perhaps is not configured properly. And then you have null pointer dereferences, which is a very bad programming issue that you work through, but it has nothing to do with a zip compressed file. And then a memory leak, which is annoying, certainly. Denial of service, I guess, to some degree, usually not intentional, But memory leak can certainly be resource exhaustion as well. But it doesn't describe zip bomb. A zip bomb and memory leak are both types of resource exhaustion. Whether it's intentional or not, it's a different question. But memory leak is not what a zip bomb does. Zip bomb eats up all of your storage space, not all of your memory. So that doesn't fit there either. The only one that fits here would really be resource exhaustion. Answer E, 55% if you got that one. Absolutely right. Well done. I know we're here close to the top of the hour. I think we can fit another question in, though, and I think we should. Let's do one more. I've got one here that asks, which of the following would be the best way to prevent a worm entering the network through a USB flash drive? Would it be an NGFW, a DNS sinkhole, DLP, a SIM, or a screened subnet? Which of the following would be the best way to prevent a worm entering the network through a USB flash drive? Would it be NGFW, DNS sinkhole, DLP, SIM, or screened subnet? You think you know the answer? Please no answers in the chat room. You want to click or use the link at the bottom, professormesser.com/QA. Can't click it. Can't click. You got to type it in. professormesser.com/QA and answer your question there. Lock it in. If you're watching this in the replay, obviously that professormesser.com/QA is not going to help you very much. Now's a bad time to bring that up here 56 minutes into the live stream. Sorry about that. But you can still follow along with all of this. You have to be here live to be able to answer live. So it becomes useful to know that. Have a look through all those answers. See if you know what the answer happens to be. Lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in that answer. How to get a virus? I don't know. We're talking years ago. I've been running a Mac for so long, I don't even think of viruses anymore. I know I'm waiting for your cards and letters. I know there are viruses for Macs, just not many. That's the difference. Everybody always likes to say, no, there's malware for Mac. Yeah, there's like 7 pieces of malware for the Mac. There's more than that. But it's relatively speaking, my worries with those types of threats in Mac OS is remarkably less than somebody who's running Windows. We'll put it that way. Relatively speaking, Mac OS has much less of a concern related to malware than the Windows operating system because that's the way it is. It's the way it works. I don't make these rules. I just go with it. So there you go. Well, watching on the news, they certainly know. If they said 3% of attacks go for Mac OS and 7% for Linux, who are any of us to say? That doesn't even make sense, does it? I don't even know where you get numbers like that. Where from the Department of Making Stuff Up, I think it's 90% Windows and 7%. No, they're just making stuff up. They're just, I guess somewhere somebody made it up and they are simply saying what someone else made up. I get it. I understand the process. Still, you don't know what that number is. There's no way to get that number. There's no way to gather through surveys. Well, that's certainly accurate. That's what I'm talking about. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Hopefully that can help you too with going through all of this. Literally what I'm talking about. Let's see how you did with this question that asked, which of the following would be the best way to prevent a worm entering the network through a USB flash drive? Would it be NGFW, a DNS sinkhole, DLP, a SIM, or a screened subnet? Let's look at our results. Oh, we're all over the place. Not a majority on this one. We have a tie for first between an NGFW and a DLP. We also have 21% of you that said a SIM, and then we have effectively a tie for third place between 10% said screen subnet and 9% said DNS sinkhole. So let's talk about USB drives. They are a very unfortunate security concern. If you're looking for a vector, that's a very common vector. We've heard all the stories of the bad guys just going to the parking lot and throwing USB drives out their window. That's an easy way for somebody walking into the building to say, oh, there's a USB drive on the ground. Let me plug it into my computer when I get to my desk. That's just too easy. But it does happen. So that's what we think might have happened in 2008 with the U.S. Department of Defense that got a worm on their network because of a USB drive. They plugged in a USB drive and they got got infected. And so immediately turned off everybody's USB drive, banned anybody from USB materials. Everything was turned off. Now, they were able to do that because they had a number of different things. They could tell their operating system and tell the other things they were using, but they were also using a data loss prevention agent on these devices, and they pushed out data loss prevention policies to that said, don't allow anybody to do anything with a USB drive. That will be great. They lifted the ban finally in February of 2010 and now have strict guidelines on how you may use USB within the Department of Defense. So for a couple years there, not even, just over a year, very difficult to do anything with a USB drive, but had to be done because it was very, very easy to get into that network by going to the parking lot, throwing a USB drive out or whatever. You catch them, maybe throw it out at the Starbucks around the corner. That's what I would do. Do it at Starbucks around the corner, the watering hole attack, along with the USB. That's how you would work that. I think that'd be fantastic. Be able to block that. DLP, very, very functional. It blocks data in many different ways, and a DLP agent on somebody's machine or server is a great way to block data. Would not be the next generation firewall, NGFW. That's what firewalls are these days. If there's a firewall that you have installed somewhere, it is most likely what the industry calls a next generation firewall, or what the company selling it calls it a next generation firewall. Not all next generation firewalls are actually next generation firewalls, but that's what people call them. So that's what the marketing folks are going with. We also have, we know that DLP was the right answer in this case. 20% of you said a SIM, that's Security Information and Event Manager, is a place where you can consolidate log files and create reports and correlate data from many different places on the network, but it does nothing to stop somebody from plugging in a USB drive and infecting the network with a worm. Not very useful there. We also have 10% of you said a screened subnet. Those of us that go back in the day, that's a DMZ. So that screened subnet also would not help anybody. In fact, you go around the screened subnet by bringing in the USB drive into the network and just plugging it in. So that's how that would work. And a DNS sinkhole is a way that you can configure your DNS server to point malicious sites to perhaps a more protected IP address that's on the inside of your network. DNS sinkhole would also not help a worm entering the network through a USB flash drive. The only one of these options that would stop a USB flash drive from working at all is the DLP, is having DLP software or an agent on your system, and the DLP would have done it. 32% of you chose DLP. That is the right answer. That's the one that, if you have DLP on your suite of security products today, then you probably have some options there for blocking this type of data. And you should have all those options there and available in it to be able to work through that. Maybe that would help you if you're going through and working through all of those. There are some options in Windows to do similar things, but what if you're not using Windows? That's the real issue. So, of course, you'd use the DLP software you're running in Mac OS and Linux or whatever operating system you're using, including iOS and Android. So it's never one thing, is it? We always use multiple layers of security to be able to make sure we can prevent things from happening. This is one of those layers. It's not exclusive, and it should not be. It should be one of the things that you're using, one of the tools in your toolkit to be able to make that happen. All the questions we went through today come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you're taking the SY0-501, make sure you grab the 501 exam objectives. If you're taking the 601, make sure you grab the 601 exam objectives. Do not cross-pollinate those. Don't use the 501 to study for 601. Don't use the 601 to study for 501. That's pretty important too. You can find these. I've got a link to the CompTIA website where you can download these for free at professormesser.com/objectives, or you can just go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives. It will take you right to the page. It really should be the first thing you download when you start your studies. If you're already in the middle of your studies, stop what you're doing, download these. Before you go in to take your exam, this is your checklist to see how well you have prepared. Are you ready to take the exam? This will tell you. These objectives will absolutely point that out to you. Make sure you're familiar with those. Make sure you get your hands on those. Incredibly useful. We do one of these study groups every month. We've got another one scheduled for June 23rd. Please come back June 23rd. We'd love to have you here. These dates can sometimes change. And you may note if you were here last week for my Network Plus study group, and I told you next month we've got a study group on the 16th. Notice we don't anymore. We have one on the 15th. We moved it back a day. So always check in on the calendar for the latest date. I update all of these immediately. If you have it connected to your Google Calendar, which you can also do from that link, I update the Google Calendar as well. You can, of course, go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll know when the next event is going to be. We've got A+ study groups on the 8th and 9th of June, Network Plus on the 15th, and Security Plus on the 23rd. Great way to come back and participate live. We'd love to have you here. It's always more fun when you're here. We'd love to have you come back, and we'll do more questions and answers from Security Plus. Can you believe we've gone through an entire hour of Q&A just like that? But that's okay. We got more Q&A coming, except in this case, you are now going to ask me the questions in the after show. Stick around for that. If you liked what you did in this first hour, there is a like button that is on the video screen you're looking at right now. Click that thumbs up button. The likes actually go back to our friends at YouTube. I have people that I work with at YouTube that are assigned to my account. They look at these metrics to see, are you worth our time? So the only way that I get to know if I'm worth YouTube's time is you get to tell them. So what a better way to get feedback back to YouTube than clicking that like button and subscribing. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube. Don't forget about the daily pop quiz, or the case of security, the weekly pop quiz questions on professormesser.com/Twitter. Or if you like your question with a pretty picture, go to professormesser.com/Instagram. Don't forget about the discounted vouchers. No special codes needed, no games. You just go out and you buy them cheap. They're just out there, professormesser.com/vouchers. And of course, my course notes, exams, and all sorts of great materials available for the 501 and 601 are available there. If you're watching this study group for continuing education unit credit, then you want to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You want to click the Contact Us link. On that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. On the subject line, please put that this is, I think, May Security Plus Study Group. Just have those 4 words. That's all I need. May Security Plus Study Group. That would be great. And on a line by itself in the body of the message, put the super secret code word of the month, NGFW. NGFW, or Next Generation Firewall, is our super secret code word of the month. In about a week, will turn these around and get back to you a digitally signed email that has the continuing education unit certification, which is me saying in the email, I certify that. So that's very useful to be able to have that there. Maybe that will help you as well. So now you've got all of the questions we went through. We've got all of the things you're able to do after this point, and you can earn a CEU. Who can beat that? Stick around for the next hour. We got plenty more to go through. I'm going to open up the phone lines. I'll take questions from the chat room. Thanks for being here, and we will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group. Well, let's see if well, that's not the picture I wanted. That's the one I wanted right here. Well, not really what I wanted, because that's me in the picture there. That's a little better. That's a little too much of me. Me with me in the picture is too much for anyone to ask for. So in the meantime, now we've got the after show, everybody. I'm going to take questions from the chat room. I'll also open up the phone lines, and we'll take questions from people calling in on the telephone. Voice communication. For those of you. For me to do that, though, I have to click a few things on my side. If you will bear with me just a moment. While I click those few things, I will make sure that I can start my show up and get those things going. I have my Skype going here. We're going to connect up. It's going to make some noises here in just a moment. Hopefully. That's always the concern. You never know. Is it going to pick up? Is it not going to pick up? Is there a show today? Is there not a show today? We never know. We're going to see what the nice lady says, though.
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
All right. I will do that. And if I do all of that correctly, she says,
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Thanks, nice lady. Well, that means you are able to communicate. Well, not with that graphic, because I haven't updated my graphics yet on the screen. I have more things to click on this side than you may not even realize. We'll have also phone lines are open along with the chat room. I'm watching both as we go by, and we'll take those questions. There were a few that came up earlier. If you would like to call in, it's a toll-free number in the continental United States, 855-785-RJ45. You can also call in west of the Rockies, 855-785-7545. We'll get you the same place. So that might help you as well. You can also, if you are working through this or you're watching from outside of the continental United States, you can use Skype to call me for free because this is a toll-free number, and you can call anywhere on Skype that is a toll-free number for free. I pay for the message. I pay for the call. You put a +1 at the beginning, +1 855-785-7545, and that would get you there as well. This is a great way to call in. You can, of course, ask questions. There was a question earlier in the chat room that talked about digital editions and physical editions. Here's a physical edition of my course notes. The physical edition is a physical book. The digital edition is a PDF. It contains exactly the same information. And the question was relating to that, which said, if you have the digital version of the book, can you get the physical version? I think the person actually said, can you get the physical version for free? Well, you can't get it for free because dead trees cost money, as it turns out. And it's printed in color. It's not inexpensive to create these physical versions. That's why if you look at the pricing between the two, you'll notice the physical version a wee bit more expensive. So, but I will give you credit for purchasing the digital version that you can then apply to upgrading. So you can get a discount off the physical version. You don't have to spend that money twice. Just spend it one time, I guess, is the way it works. But you're still going to end up spending the money, unfortunately, to have that there. Maybe that will help you as well. So I think that can help you along the way if you're trying to figure out what should you work on to be able to work through this. Can you call from India? You can call from anywhere in the world. That's a toll-free number, but it works on Skype anywhere in the world. Just put that +1 at the beginning, just like it says, +1 855-785-7545. So hopefully that will help you. Let's go to the phone lines. It's a Florida connection, the 407 Central Florida area code. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Mesa. My name is Michael, and I'm relatively new. I was reading some of the recommendations with CompTIA. They were mentioning perhaps do a Network Plus security, and then Security Plus. And then let's say if you want to be a penetration tester, then go into penetration tester after that. Would you say that's a good course of action, or could you just, skip over Network Plus and go right to Security Plus?
It's not a bad course of action. One of the things that it's hard to say is that it could go either way. We could have different paths to be able to get from one side of the industry to the other. I started in help desk. I moved into networking, moved into servers, then to networking, then to security. Now, if you were able to find a security position that is able to give you a job without having any other experience, then that makes sense. You could just start with security. There's not a lot of jobs out there for that, though. A lot of the jobs dealing with security are very much expecting you to have some existing knowledge of how this whole system is going to work out. So I think if you're working towards security, having knowledge of networking, having knowledge of operating systems, having knowledge of servers is only going to help you. But there are a few jobs out there. I've spoken in other study groups about a security operations center, and a SOC is one of those examples of a technology or a job that might start you in security without having any other type of experience. So it's really what the employers in your area are looking for. See if you can find what the employers may be looking for in your area. That might help you a little bit as well. It may be useful to spend at least 15, 30 minutes going through the jobs in your area. See what they're asking for. Is everybody asking for Security Plus? Are they asking for Network Plus? Might help you in deciding what direction you go.
Oh, okay. But ultimately, if you want to be a penetration tester, then you're saying that would be the right path, or you're saying to do A+ and then move past A+ towards.
The pen testing is kind of the upper level echelons in the IT security world. And if you're working as a penetration tester, you still need to have a good, probably more than a good foundation in all of those things. You need to be an expert in networking. You really need to understand operating systems. You need to have a good understanding of Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and mobile devices. And there are other higher level certifications you might want to work towards if you're planning a career in penetration testing, but that's not a role you would sort of jump into as your first job in security. You work up to that role eventually especially since there's so few penetration testing jobs out there relative to all of the others in IT security.
Excellent. Thank you.
I appreciate the call. Thanks so much. So I'm looking at the messages people are sending in the chat room saying there wasn't any connectivity. In fact, I'm getting alternating stories from my YouTube front end on my stream health that tells me that there's no stream available on this, but I haven't stopped the stream. The stream is exactly the way I left it. So I'm going to go back into my live side. It shows me live. We'll go back into the control room. Probably just refresh. You turn everything off and you turn it back on again, and we'll see if anything works. I'm looking at it right now, and my stream health shows me the stream is healthy. Although, as people mentioned, YouTube did seem to have a little bit of a glitch a few minutes ago. Sorry about that, but I don't have control of YouTube's challenges with these things. So hopefully that little glitch was just minor. We'll have to look at it afterwards. I don't like to go through and work through the challenges with editing and reposting the pieces of this. So that's one of those where hopefully it won't be a problem for you either. Let me pop open the chat room. I'm now going to reconstruct everything on my screen, which normally I have to do to be able to get that. So we've done that, and we're back up, and I think we're in good shape. So I froze for a few seconds, which is probably just enough. It didn't feel that cool here, but I guess I did freeze for a little bit. Rob in the chat room, thank you for the $19.99 super chat donation. We appreciate that. The question you have in here, it's a great way to get your question right to the top of the queue, by the way. Why do most IT jobs require an A+ certification than Network Plus? So in this case, Rob passed your Network Plus exam, but all the jobs seem to ask for A+, and that tends to be pretty standard in the industry. It's one of those situations where you have to know the market. We were just speaking to the last caller about this, is that knowing the market is probably one of the most important parts of the job process. What are people asking for? If you are in the DC area, a lot of the IT jobs there practically require a Security Plus. If you go to Dallas and you look at the IT jobs there, not quite the same emphasis, probably very different emphasis in certifications that people are looking for. May not be the same number of people asking for this. A lot of entry-level jobs in IT are looking for A+ because it's a very broad certification. It covers operating systems. It does a lot of people, I think, dismiss, and this is Donna's even mentioning in the chat room, is that my mentor said the A+ isn't the best anymore and took it off the table. I don't think your mentor gets to decide that, nor do I, nor do you. I think what you have to be able to do is go to the listing of jobs in your area and what are people asking for. That is the true determination of value. If an employer is hiring you because you have an A+, guess what? The A+ is like the most important certification in the world, if that's what they're hiring for. If an employer is looking for Network Plus, turns out Network Plus is the most important certification in the world. If the employers are looking for Security Plus, you see where this is going. So that's the real thing to know, is that it's not up to me to determine what the best certifications are for a particular job. It's not up to you. It's not up to any third party. It's up to the employers. And in the video that I did of how to get a job in IT with no experience, which I think I stuck already in this video description. If it's not, Lori will put it in the video description of how to get a job in IT with no experience. It's on my YouTube channel. I talk about how you know which certifications to get and which certifications are valuable. And that's effectively the shorter version of what I put in the video, which is find out what people are asking for, go get what they're asking for, period. Is Network Plus a higher level certification? It's certainly considered a high level certification. Is Security Plus higher level? It is. CCNA, even higher level than that. That's not even an entry level cert. CCNA would be more of an intermediate level cert or just higher than entry level. So CCNA, why wouldn't you just go get a CCNA? Because if an employer sees you have no experience and you walk in the door with a CCNA, you're overqualified immediately. Overqualification is a real thing. People do not want to hire you if they think you're going to be bored doing this job. And if you have no experience in IT, you need to have the requisite certifications for somebody that doesn't have any experience. And in your particular area, that might be A+. It probably is A+. So that's where I always tell people you have to redirect that question. Redirect it from where you are from a IT perspective and what you want to do. I want to get into security. I want to do Cisco networking. I want to do the other types of networking. Well, you don't want to do this then. You want to instead, it's not about you. As much as you would like it to be, it's not about you. This is just one of the many times in my life I've been told it's not about me. And so you need to find out it's about the employer. What are they looking for? And if all the employers are looking for A+, turns out that's the best certification ever. That's the one you should be getting. So that's the real key is working your way up. And you will work into networking. You will work into security. You will get there. There is a path for that. There's tons of jobs. There's plenty of ways to get through the processes and get to that point, but you need some background experience. And A+ is a great one to get experience in the raw hardware, get experience in operating systems, get experience in troubleshooting Windows, troubleshooting printers. That's what you're going to be doing a lot. And then finally, move up from there. Once you start working there and you start working on the network, you work with the network team and you help them build out a network and you help them run cables and you work on helping them crimp things. You get to know the people in that department. They'll bring you over. But they want you in that position. They want to see how your people skills are. They want to see how your troubleshooting skills are. They want to see all of these things about how you work with technology. Turns out the help desk is exactly what shows those things. So I think that's a good example. Are the MTA certs worth it? It's the same answer. It's exactly the same answer as is an A+ worth it? Is the Network Plus worth it? Is Security Plus worth it? Are the MTA certs worth it? Are employers, let's back up. Is your goal to get a job? If so, what do employers want you to have? That's the answer. Now, I realize that's a very myopic perspective. It's a very single gold perspective. There's, of course, things around that. You want to be better with technology. You want to learn more for yourself. You want to be able to build your knowledge base for jobs that you might get in the future. Absolutely. Absolutely you do. But for most of us, we're getting these certifications to get that job. And if that's the case, we need to correlate and put them directly together with each other and figure out what makes the most sense. So if everybody in your area wanted you to get a third party, let's say they wanted to get you a Juniper certification, like every entry-level job in your area says you have to get a Juniper cert. Very unusual. But guess what certification you're going to go get? Go get a Juniper cert because that's what they want. So that's the real key. Now, there's other things you need to do to be able to get that job. In that video, I talk about knowing people who work there, getting experience, setting up your home lab, understanding what type of formal education you might want to put on along with the lines on all of that. So that's the real key. So whenever I get these questions, so already in here, people have said, what about A+? What about MTA? What about Azure? See, Azure just came up. Would that be a good one to have? I don't know. What does the employer want you to have? So I know that's it's sort of a cop-out answer. It's sort of a bad answer. Like, I don't know if that's good for you. What do you want to do? And what are employers looking for? That's the answer. So I kind of have to turn the whole table around and point the mirror the other direction for a little bit because you do need to do some research. Create a spreadsheet. Go out to your favorite online job posting site. Go through every job that you think applies to your particular goals and objectives, what you want to do and you think fits what your qualifications are, and figure out what they're looking for and create an entire spreadsheet. Find 10 jobs in your area. Create a spreadsheet with all 10 of these jobs. Are there correlations there? Are there certifications they're all asking for? Are there some people asking for different certifications than the other? What are they asking for? That's what you need to do. And that's the only answer I can give you because I'm not hiring you. Someone else is. So they're going to be able to answer the question. You effectively have to answer the question from them. Let's go back to the phones. We've got a return caller. It's Dave. Hi, Dave. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Hey, Professor Messer. I appreciate everything you're doing for us guys trying to get the Security Plus. But I have a question that my friend, she had experienced an anonymous phone call. She was at the store. She left her dog outside in the car, and some guy had came by in the car and saw that and called her, and she asked him for his name. How did he get her phone number? And he didn't say. And then eventually he drove off, but she did a reverse search on his number and found out who he was on Facebook. Is there a way that somebody can just drive by and get your, say, like your tag number? And she didn't have any magnetic signs on the car, and get your phone number to call you, if they think that the dog is in distress or something? Or is that something you just have to call the police about?
Well, this is one of these situations as well that is, you don't know where they got the data from, but in many states, the information is maybe more generally available than in other states. It's a very in the United States, every state has their own policy on how they handle license tag information, because it seems like that would be the most common way we can think of in our minds that someone would have gotten your contact info. Although I'm trying to think, I think I did register my car tags with my mobile number too. So you could actually get a mobile number. But we also don't want to discount that the person who called, although now you know a little bit more about the person who called, they could work for an organization that has access to the credit card or to the license tag database. So that might be, or they might know somebody or have a family member who is in the police and they have access. So you see, there's many ways to gain access to information, especially open source intelligence, OSINT. They did their own OSINT without maybe they did have a computer in front of them. Maybe they just called around though to gather those details. That's not beyond the realm of possibility. We often don't think about our license tag numbers, the addresses where we live, those are things that are very public. In many states, the house where you live is all public when it was purchased, when it's sold, the things you own. There's a lot of ways to gather that open source intelligence. And so I wouldn't get freaked out about it. It's kind of annoying that somebody's trying to call you out that your dog's in the car and they're complaining about it. And that's another part of it that probably is emotional and gets people in an argumentative state. And of course, we don't know what happened with the conversation that took place, but I like to think that someone is doing that because they're looking out for the best for the pooch, and you can thank them for calling you and that we're all taken care of and they have everything they need and the dog is not going to be a problem. And I do know the dog is there, and thank you so much for calling. Goodbye, and go with it. But you can't stop those things. If somebody wants to get your mobile number, there's a number of places I can think of that people could go to right now and probably get my mobile number. Please don't call me on my mobile number. But that's one of those cases where we don't know how they got it. But is it so hard to get your mobile number these days? Not really. Should you be it's kind of freaky, kind of creepy that someone would do that? Ugh, you got my phone number. That's true. Yeah. That's probably the icky part of this, is just somebody at some time finding you, hunting you down, and calling you. But we can hope in this particular case they were doing it for all the right reasons and not for something that would be considered harassment. And we just go with it that way. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. You just keep it moving, block their number, and keep it moving. That's what you do.
Right. Okay. I appreciate that info.
Hopefully that's not going to happen to any of us. I just find that it's a little off-putting, though. If that happened to me, I'd be a little creeped out by it. Even though I know all the things. I know how they would have gone about getting my number. I know that they can call at any time. I know all of that happens. Still creeps you out a little bit, doesn't it? So
it does.
It just makes you think about your own personal safety and the things you need to do to maintain the safety of you and your family and all of your property. But that's certainly Another important consideration when we talk about security is physical security, and maybe that fits into this as well.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Messer.
I appreciate the call, Dave. Have a good one.
You too.
It's sort of off-putting when those types of things happen. And we're seeing more and more of it. And we're, of course, I think we're becoming a little more also concerned about who's really calling us. Are you really outside? Did you really see my dog? Did this really happen? If just a random person calls me, I'm looking at your dog, right? Are you really? Really? But they actually might be. In this particular case, they probably were. I wouldn't believe someone if they called me. Oh, yeah, really? Okay, thanks. I'd probably hang up on them. The real answer, though, is I would have never answered the phone. I'm that person. Like, I don't recognize that number. If it's that important, they'll leave a voicemail. That's who I am. Because I never talk on the phone. Very rarely am I expecting a call. Very rarely is it that particular situation. And if I am expecting a call, I've usually programmed them into my phone so that I know when they're calling. Or what I've tried to do with everybody I work with is I've just trained everyone to text message. And that makes it so much easier. And the only problem you run into is doctor's offices, where apparently the only way they can communicate with you is by pulling out an IBM Selectric typewriter, typing a letter, putting that into an envelope, licking a stamp, and sending it to you. They just don't know how to do anything else. I had a doctor once text me with messages. I thought, I can't believe we're finally at that point where we can text me now. Text messaging changes the world, but now we have to worry about text messaging spam and all the things associated with that. We just talked about that and having that there. Question in the chat room: how many pages are my SY0-601 Security Plus course notes? If I look at the last page of information, 120 pages of this all the way to the back. And that's 120 pages of notes. I don't start counting until the first page of notes. So that first page is page 1, even though it's like 6-7 pages into it. 120 pages, plenty to have there. Yeah, I'm seeing the same sort of laggy, poor response from YouTube that the chat room is seeing. That's just nature of the beast today, it seems. Now it tells me I have an excellent connection, so we're going to hope for the best. That's kind of it's either a local provider problem today or it's a YouTube problem today. It happens from time to time, but it doesn't seem to be debilitating in any case. So we're going to keep it moving and see what we can do with those. Maybe we can work through any of those problems. But we'll go back to the phones anyway, to the 309 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller.
Hi, my name is Jill.
Hey, Jill.
Hi, and I'm from Illinois. And I was just wondering, I'm taking the exam on Friday for Security Plus.
Okay.
And I'm trying to fit in as much last-minute studying as I can in these next few days. And I was wondering if you had any tips on what you think are like the most difficult parts to pass or to work on, I guess, for that.
Which exam are you taking, the 501 or the 601?
The 601.
Okay. So there's a few things that are a little bit different with the 601 versus the 501. So we'll start, of course, with the objectives themselves are broadly different. So for those of you that are taking the 501, Jill did not have to memorize any of the detailed symmetric encryption protocols, asymmetric encryption protocols, hashing algorithms. None of those ciphers had to be memorized because they're not on the 601 exam. So you kind of got a break along those lines. I also found, looking through the question style on the 601, that it was very straightforward. If you go back and look at 501 exam questions, my exam questions book for 501, which I don't recommend you do, but for those of you that have looked at that before, you'll know on the 501 exam, and I've even said this before, it's almost a comprehension, a reading comprehension exam as much as it is security, because the questions are 4 and 5 sentences long with multiple bullets, all to answer one single multiple choice question. What I found with the 601 is the questions are so much more straightforward. They are 1 and 2 sentences for the majority of questions you get on the exam. Sometimes you get a 3-sentence question. And there are questions there that are longer with multiple bullets on the 601, but they're very few and far between. So I think the questions on the 601 are better in their style of question and answer. I think you'll be able to get through the exam a lot faster. But it is a broad exam. There are many, many more topics. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of additional topics on the 601 exam that you don't see on the 501. Since you're planning to take this exam so quickly, the only thing I can really recommend you do is go to the exam objectives and just start checking off objective by objective by objective and going through each one of those. And if you can explain to yourself or to someone else what that particular objective means, then you can check that one off your list and go to the next one. So this might be a good way to maybe circle very large groups of information that maybe you weren't able to go through so well the first time through, or find little details that are hidden within these domains that maybe you could brush up on before walking into the exam. Because what I have found in the questions they ask on 601 is they cover everything on that exam. They could cover everything on that exam. They don't tend to leave out much at all on the exam questions. They take a little sampling from everything. So you won't be able to, people often ask, is there a section I should study more than another? Nope. They are equally as painful across all domains. You are not going to be in a situation where one particular type of technology is asked more than another, except at the domain level. Now, you'll notice on the exam objectives, I don't even think I have the objectives up right now. I don't. But you'll notice on the exam objectives that the different domains have a different percentage asked on the exam, and we can assume from that that certain topics might appear more than others. So that's another thing you might want to consider, is more from a broad perspective, is there a certain domain that they ask more than another, and have I studied more for that domain than the others? Because it's a relative term, relative to the other domains. Have you really put in the time? Make sure you kind of examine that and honestly tell yourself, have I studied for the amount that I would expect to receive on my exam for that particular domain? And if you haven't, now's the time to go through and start going through the checklist. I think that's really the best thing you can do when you're short of time. When you got like an hour left, an hour, or I say a week left, and going through this, you need to study, where do I spend my hours studying for that week of time? That's what you would do, is go through that and use it as a checklist. Have you had a chance to do that yet? Or is this sort of the beginning of that last phase for you?
No, I've not quite done that yet. I was looking at the objectives this morning, but I haven't really gone through that process. So
that's a great last phase, last push, last set of studies. That's the way to do it, because that'll bring up the areas that you perhaps haven't gotten down cold yet. And of course, those are the ones they're going to ask you on the exam, or the things you don't know. So that's my recommendation. Use your exam objectives. They are incredibly valuable. They're free. You can download them right now. Start checking off the list. Either print them out or annotate them online. They're just a PDF file. You can go through every single one of those. It will take you all day just to go through that entire list. So now's the time to start.
Okay, thank you so much for your help, and I really appreciate your videos and the resources you give.
Thanks, Jill. I appreciate the call. Best of luck.
Thanks.
This is always a challenge. You're getting into that last section of study, and the real question most people have is, when do I go in and take this exam? Am I ready to go in and take this exam? Because if you've never gotten to this point of taking a certification exam, or you're just not comfortable knowing when the right time is, CompTIA and their exam objectives are very unique in the industry. You will not find this from Microsoft. You will not find it from Cisco. You will not find it from Apple. You will not find it from Amazon. They are the only ones, for the most part, that will tell you bullet by bullet exactly what you need to know for the exam. They tell you everything. It's a comprehensive list. It's pages and pages and pages. I'm talking about it here, and I just don't even have it up on the screen. I should probably work along those lines. I'm talking about it so much, but not showing it to you. And I have the exam objectives right here somewhere. It's for the 501. Let me pull up the objectives for the 601 I think I have the version 3 objectives for those of you watching. Here are the exam objectives. So there they are. For the 601 exam, we'll open it up. On the domain side, you can see the breakdown. So for example, the domain 3.0 implementation is 25% of the exam. So a quarter of the exam, same thing for domain 1, attacks, threats, and vulnerabilities, 24%. Half your exam is domains 1 and 3. So have you spent half your time studying from domains 1 and 3? If you look at domain 5, governance, risk, and compliance, which I fell asleep multiple times making these videos. Risk videos are the best, aren't they? For only 14% of the exam, though. So relative to implementation, you should get fewer questions about governance, risk, and compliance on your exam. So that's what I mean by figuring out which side of these you should go with. But let's look at an actual exam objective. So for instance, let's just start at section 1. Compare and contrast different types of social engineering techniques. And you need to know phishing, smishing, vishing, spam. Spam over internet messaging, or spam. Spear phishing, dumpster diving, shoulder surfing, farming, tailgating, eliciting information, whaling, prepending, identity fraud, invoice scams, residential harvesting, reconnaissance, hoax, impersonation, and many more. It just goes on and on and on. The reason I kind of stepped through all of those and just kept telling you on all the bullet by bullet, we're only halfway through section 1.1 at this point. That's how detailed the exam objectives are. They tell you everything you need to know. So if you are studying for your exam and you know everything that's in this list, you're good. You don't need to study anymore. You got it. That is exactly what you will be asked for on the exam. A real challenge to have that there. The 601 exam is 1/3 larger by number of objectives than the 501. So if it takes you 3 months to study for the 501 exam, it's another month to study for the 601. So if you want to talk about difficulty level, I think that goes into the realm of having to memorize or remember more information. That certainly makes it more difficult by a large margin. That makes it much more difficult. I would not say the 601 is an easier exam than the 501. It is clearly more difficult to get through. Once you know everything, I think the way they ask the questions on the exam is very comparable. I think the exam itself, from a difficulty level, the exams are similar in their difficulty by the way they ask the questions, but the amount of information you have to memorize for the 601 is so much larger that just makes it a harder exam. That's the reason I always recommend getting your 501, because you'll save so much money and time, effort in doing that. Important consideration. Let's go back to phone lines to the 856 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Caller.
Yeah, hi, Professor. This is Amu. Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Am I audible?
You are.
Okay, thank you. So this is Amu calling from India. First of all, I would like to thank you for all the continuing videos that you produce every month on the Security Plus study groups.
Quite welcome.
I already have a Security Plus certification, dated back in 2019, and I am now looking forward towards moving into the cloud security. Although I don't have enough practical experience in the cloud domain. So what would you recommend? Because I'm currently studying for CCSP, ISC squared CCSP exam. Although I do plan to take it maybe in a 12 months time from now. Okay. So what would you recommend before attempting that CCSP? Something like Cloud Plus to get a more practical experience and then attempt CCSP?
I like the idea of getting more cloud certifications. I think that the industry and what employers are looking for, they are asking for more knowledge in cloud technologies. I think there's a lot of open positions, and the people in those positions need more help. and there's just not enough knowledge of cloud. The cloud is happening and moving so fast that being very knowledgeable in cloud technologies is a very powerful set of skills today. So I think you're absolutely right for pursuing some type of certification and knowledge on the cloud computing side. Along those lines, there's a lot of options out there for cloud computing certifications. The ones that are probably mentioned the most when I look at job postings are the job postings, the certifications from Microsoft. Their Azure certifications are brought up quite a bit. So that's a good example of some certifications that would be good to look into. And the other ones are the Amazon certifications, probably because there are so many people using Azure and there's so many people using Amazon that they want people who are knowledgeable with those front ends, those technologies, to be able to work with them. So if I had to choose one of those, I would probably go see what employers are looking for. But either one of those is a good bet. And once you understand how Azure works, you kind of understand how the cloud works broadly, and you can apply that to other cloud providers as well. Microsoft has just sort of jumped on board and has taken hold of the industry with the cloud. So because of that, I often tell people, why not add in? Everybody knows Microsoft certifications. They trust Microsoft certifications. And Microsoft has had a big push into cloud certifications. Now's the time to take advantage of that. That's what I would recommend to you as well. But it should also be tempered with what employers are looking for. And if employers would rather you have an Amazon cert, then go get the Amazon. Either way, you're a winner. You cannot lose with that one.
All right, no problem. Thank you, Professor. Maybe in the 1 year down the line, once I have some sort of practical knowledge in terms of managing the cloud services, while attempting the certification that you just mentioned, the ground level certification rather, on the cloud technologies, then I can definitely attempt the CCSP.
I think that's a good plan. That's a good path. You're kind of working the knowledge you have and working your way up those different levels. That's a great way to level up, and I think it's a good strategy.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate the call, and always a good idea. Everyone should be thinking about their strategy. You should already have in your mind, all right, I want to work here for 2 years. I want to learn as much as I can about the network. Then I want to go maybe work for the network team that we have here, or work for a network team. And then I want to move up into security. I want to do IT security. I want to learn about SIMs. I want to learn about VPNs. You should already have this path in your mind. Is that path going to be exactly the path you follow? Nope, it's not, because the world is unpredictable. And often you may find that a new technology falls in your lap you weren't expecting, and now you're suddenly the expert in that new technology. That sometimes happens too. Either way, you're in pretty good shape. You're now studying, you're continuing the path, you're moving up, you have a plan. The worst thing you can do is to look where you are and go, yeah, I'm happy here. There's nothing else I want to do than work in this job. Probably not actually, that's a very healthy thing to think about. That's the way I think in the position I'm in now. I don't plan on going anywhere. I like what I'm doing. But if you're planning to move up, if you have an idea of other things you would like to do in the industry, and you want to do those, you want to either learn more, you want to make more money, you want to have more options for your jobs, you want to have more options for what you do and where you work, then there will need to be a path. So already put the path there. If you don't build the path, you're never going to get down that road. You need to already have in your mind that this is the way you're going to go with this. It already changes the way you act. It changes the way you work. It changes the things you learn and how you learn them. So you should already have that path in place. I think it's a positive reinforcement in your mind. And then use that path to work yourself towards that end goal. Another important part of that. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to the 240 area code. It's Oliver. Thank you for calling again. Thank you for holding.
Hey, how you doing?
Appreciate the call. What can we do for you?
So I just passed my Core 1 A+ exam back in February,
Nice.
and right now I'm studying for my Core 2.
Great.
I just like to first thank you for your videos and your course notes. Definitely it's a big help.
More than happy to help with those. Glad they were able to help a little bit. So are you working on Core 2 now?
Yeah, I'm currently studying for my Core 2. I plan to take it probably a month or two from now.
Okay.
I'm just going through some Q&A. I did buy your practice exams too.
Thank you.
So I got two questions here. My first question is that so I got an internship this summer for a company that mainly specializes in like law enforcement technology.
Okay.
So like radios, cameras,
Yeah.
Bluetooth, wireless, radio frequency. And it's not really what I expected at first for some reason, but at the same time, it's very interesting and I like it so far. And my ultimate goal was to like work in cloud or security. And another thing that I get to do is work with servers. So how can I make the most out of this job, even though it wasn't my first, interest, because this is definitely out of my, expectation.
Well, that's a very unique niche of technology, which is law enforcement, especially the mobility associated with law enforcement. And I've done a little bit of work with people who do that and had some conversations and listened to presentations for people that are working through that. And it is a science unto itself. We don't talk a lot about these mobile technologies and the way that law enforcement uses them a lot in the A+ or Network Plus, mostly because it's so unique. You don't see that type of networking or that type of technology used outside the scope of law enforcement because of the unique requirements that law enforcement would have with this. But it is something that's pervasive. Every car and every person, and now they're even expanding it further into everyone's cameras. It's growing. The need for a particular knowledge in that niche is certainly a large one. And from there is a jumping off point to other technologies. Once you understand the nuances of the 4 and 5G technologies that you're using to connect all of the cars, you're using different technologies in the existing radio communications that for voice that are there. There's so much technology that's built into that you can then apply other places. And it may be that you're applying it to 802.11 networks on a campus, or you're applying it to other, maybe a transportation company that needs a similar type of communication. You can still use that knowledge in other roles wherever you happen to go. So that's what I would recommend, that you learn as much as you can about that. Is it pure IP networking with Cisco switches and routers? Not necessarily, although there's certainly a path to that. So I think that's where I would recommend you. That's a great job. There's plenty to learn. There are technologies there that you will be able to apply to whatever you do in the future. So it's a great position. It's a great thing to have your hands on. Is it, you mentioned maybe not the thing that you were thinking the most about what you wanted to do, but there's always time to do that. Maybe that's the next step or the step after that. But having this level of knowledge with something that's very key, it's very specific, I use the term niche a lot here, but it really is very niche, speaks to other employers that you're able to work through those types of technologies. It's a very complex set of technologies. It's not easy. There's tons of challenges. There's things you're going to have to be able to work through and engineer around. That's the type of experience that people want you to have when you move to the next job, even if your next job happens to have no RF in it at all. There's just no wireless communication at all in your next position, but you'll still have the skills that you learned putting this one in to be able to apply to that. So the technologies I learned when I started my career back when we did everything with chisels and stone, that technology I learned back then, I can't use today. It was IBM mainframes and middleware and a lot of coax and emulation programs. But the things that I did with troubleshooting, with managing the network, with optimizing protocols, with setting up an infrastructure that was up all the time, I had fault tolerance built in, I had high availability, those same skills I use today. So there's no difference what I did 20 years ago, 30 years ago versus what I do now. You'll be able to use those skills wherever you go. So don't worry that you're somehow learning something that will shoehorn you or put you in a corner. No, this is expanding your capabilities and giving you potential and options for the future.
Right. And actually, this is like my first technical job. And so, I mean, who knows? Maybe my goals might change and maybe I might want to work in this field. Honestly, it depends. So I'm really just trying to keep like an open mind about it and just trying to learn as much as I can.
Some of the most interesting things I've worked on with technology through the years have been related to law enforcement, interestingly enough. Did some upgrades to systems in a DNA lab, worked with customers putting in systems that were in a jail facility. There were other times I was working with designing networks for connectivity for the law enforcement, for the police stations. Those things you will be able to use and apply wherever you go. So learn as much as you can, soak it all in, and be able to use some of this knowledge and technology on the next step. You're right. There will be another job. Maybe it will be within law enforcement. Maybe you'll move to transportation. Maybe you'll move to financial services. Maybe you'll do something with manufacturing. Maybe you'll be in healthcare. All of those things, a piece of all of those things, you'll be able to take what you've learned and use it in all of those. So I think that's what you should do too, is learn as much as you can. And from there, you can use that technology and move up and around to whatever you want to do in the industry. The only real thing we have that gives us leverage when we're looking for jobs is our knowledge. So learn as much as you can, and then you'll be able to use that knowledge next job, wherever that happens to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. So my second question is, I'm currently enrolled at a school that's similar to WGU. So just a little background, every class for me is about 8 weeks, and all my IT classes are basically the materials for like industry certification. So they have their own class that teaches like A+, Network+, all the CompTIA, even Linux and Cloud+, even as far as the CEH and the CCNA. So I know 8 weeks, that's a pretty condensed time. So my future plan was to, like, as I'm taking the class for the 8 weeks, that I supplement it with, for example, your videos or a Q&A or even a class on Udemy. And so I just wanted your opinion. Like, is it realistic to get all this material while also trying to balance the accelerated, 8 weeks? Like, what is your opinion on that?
I think your perspective of this is pretty accurate. 8 weeks is very aggressive for many of these certifications. I often tell people that getting a Security Plus on average tends to be about 3 months. If you really work through very aggressively and go through it, you can shorten that time frame. If you have other experience in the industry, you can shorten that time frame. So 8 weeks of a focused class that is going through these topics isn't necessarily a horrible number. It's certainly much better than the 1 or 2 weeks that you would see with these horrible boot camps that you would have there. 8 weeks is a pretty good number, but I think you're right that even then you're getting a lot of different types of information that you're learning very, very quickly. The best you're going to do is just kind of keep up. You're going to be hit with a lot of information very quickly. You'd be doing well to grab other resources and be able to read through some of this content just to get through these, because I'm assuming they're going to have you take the certification exam at the end of these things. That's probably how they would really set you up for success. And if you want to be ready for that, you're going to need to supplement this. Try to use as many different resources as you can. Get videos, get books, get Q&A, get some hands-on. Use as much of that classroom resources as you can. They probably have practically all of those available for you to use as part of the class itself. Take advantage of those. It's the only way you're going to be able to get through that much material that quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And an additional benefit is that I believe they do pay for around 60% of the exam. So I'm definitely going to try to take that, advantage. I do also plan to study even before the class starts and probably extend it after the class starts, because I'm trying to use those tools to help me get those certifications, at the same time while getting these college classes done. So I definitely think it's going to be a challenge, but I think, just as long as I supplement it with the proper material, I think I might be all right.
There are so many people that come to my site and they're just trying to get this one certification done. They have limited resources available to them. They're still not quite sure how they're going to end up paying for the certification exam itself. There's all these challenges with just getting the one cert. Now, in your particular case, you're relatively fortunate. It's a very structured environment. You've got other people in the class and instructors that you could lean on, along with third-party resources. A lot of the costs associated with the certification are at least somewhat covered. It's a great opportunity. It's kind of what I'm saying is don't mess this one up. You got a good thing going here. Take advantage of as much of this as you possibly can, and nobody's hiring somebody that has all 8 of these certs in their pocket, but having 1 or 2 of those certs in your pocket and showing that to a prospective employer is incredibly valuable, along with everything else that you're learning anyway through the process. It's a great opportunity. Make sure you take advantage of it.
Awesome. I appreciate, all the work you put in, and I believe that's all the questions I have, but I'll definitely keep you updated.
Please do.
What happens with the job and the certifications.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear how that goes and how the process is, not only with the classes that you're taking, but also with the job. It's always interesting to see the path that other people take. We appreciate the call.
Yeah, no problem. You have a good one.
This is why I think we sometimes forget that there is no direct on a rail process in IT. And caller, I see you've been holding for a while. We'll get to you in just a moment, but I want to, before I forget this, is that the way that you move up or around in IT is really based on what you want to be able to do. You're the one looking for the jobs. You're the one going after these positions wherever they happen to be. And there's many different ways to get to the job that you want to have. Sometimes these paths go a different way than even what you were expecting. And that's the part that I think we don't often think about, is sometimes it's a surprise. The job that I had just prior to doing this full time, I worked as a systems engineer for Palo Alto Networks. And it's a job that someone called me that I knew, that I'd worked with in the past, and said, hey, I'm going to go work here. You should check this out. They have some openings and you would be perfect for this. I'm like, man. In fact, I told them initially, I don't know if I really want to do that. And the more I talked to them, they're like, oh, okay. They're pretty excited about this. Let me go see what they're doing. And that eventually turned into my next job and what I went to work for, and worked there 7 years through as they were a startup, and worked all the way through them going public and growing. And it was an amazing experience. And I would not have ever thought that was the path. But as it turns out, it was a perfectly logical path based on the things that I'd done in the past. So sometimes we overthink these things. Don't overthink it. Just focus on what you know and where you want to go, and everything else is going to work itself out. Trust me. This industry is big, and there's a lot of options available for you out there. Just go grab one of them. Try it out. See how that works for you. Absolutely consider. So let's go back to the phones. The 908 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? Am I on mute?
Hello?
Oh, there we are. Hi, caller.
Hi, my name is Mohammed. I'm from the UK, actually. And I've got kind of a question to ask you, because with how I passed my A+ exam, I'm certified now.
Great.
And I was just wondering about thank you for the question that you gave for the core 1 and core 2, because while I was doing basically working as I've enrolled to a course, where basically this company, I just paid about £500, and they gave me the whole thing basically, and they gave me access to live labs, and I had 90 questions I could do.
That's fantastic.
And while I was doing them, I did these 100 times over and over again, and then to the point where I didn't actually have to look at that. I didn't have to look at the question. I just look at the answers. I don't know which ones are right, because I did it over so much. And then I was getting a bit stale, so I was looking. Then I just looked on your Professor Messer question. questions, and I was getting these wrong. So I was like, oh my God. I was a bit worried because I was like, oh, I was getting them right there. But when I did your questions, they were different. And I was starting getting it wrong. So the Instagram questions as well, I love them because it's just like a quick, easy way for me to find out what I'm good at. So then I started doing your questions. I was like, oh, okay, this is amazing. And then I went into the exam. Now, the first time, core one, I failed. First time, I got about 650 or something like that. What was it? So when I was reading the questions, they worded it very weirdly. I don't know how to explain it. Basically, that there's a one word that's different that makes the answers change. Like you can clearly tell. There's always every question, like 2 answers are wrong, 2 answers are right. Like right. 2 in the cross. You just need to know which one of them. It's just something in the wording, and it was putting me off. It was putting me off quite a lot of time. And then after the first exam, I went back, typed on Google, A plus 220 -1001 questions and questions, because I just want to do some more. I just want to do more questions. And I just randomly came on these websites, and I was going through these, and it's a bit weird because the questions that they came on on internet search were the ones that I did, like the exact same ones that I did. The wording was the same, and I was just like, hold on a second, this is a bit weird, because if these are the questions and the answers are already there now, it was so weird for me because I was like, hold on a second, this kind of feels like cheating. I don't know how to explain this. So I was like, there must be something that CompTIA must know about this, because it's just a Google search and it was the first one right there, and it's just boom, 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 and I was like, this can't be, like, I was in my head, I was like, this is too good to be true. This has to be too good to be true. And I just want to know what kind of your opinion on that is. I don't know if anyone else has like even seen this or not, because I was like, this has to be some sort of troll thing or something like that, because it didn't make any sense to me how the questions from the CompTIA exams go straight up there on the internet for everybody to see.
It is a bit of an ethical dilemma, certainly. And this is what other people may have seen out on the internets and figuring out the details of this. But for those of you listening, and I realize it was a difficult connection there for people to understand what's going on. But effectively, the caller has gone through the process of taking the A+ certification, but then found places on the internet that appeared to have questions that were similar, if not exact, to what they found on the actual exam. And this is what we call in the industry a brain dump. I know that's not exactly what some people define as a brain dump, but that's commonly how it is advertised on the internet. And it is cases where people have in some way obtained actual exam questions and they are making them available to others on the internet. And to your question, that something's not quite right about that. Does CompTIA know about it or not is an obvious question, because it is copyrighted material and it is unethical to have access to the questions, that the actual exam questions, before you take the exam. CompTIA does not allow this. They don't want that. It is not something that is acceptable. And they even tell you, as part of the exam objectives and as part of the candidate agreement you sign prior to taking the exam, that if you disseminate this information or if you have used this information and they statistically have identified you as someone who did already know this information prior to walking in and taking the exam, that they can revoke your certification. They pretty much spelled out that way in the candidate agreement. So I would be very careful when you are looking at questions and answers on the internet that you are not using actual exam materials that are coming from someone who has posted these in an effort to disseminate the actual exam questions. Other people, for some reason, will try to justify in their minds the purposes of using these. No, this is preparing me for the exam. No, this is getting me familiar with the way they ask the questions. It's not. It's cheating. It's cheating, plain and simple. This one, there's no black and white. There's no little gray area in the middle. It is cheating. There's no question about that. It is unethical. And certainly if you're taking a Security Plus exam, using actual exam materials to cheat prior to going into the exam is questionable at best. Plus, you don't learn anything. You don't learn a thing by going through that process. You're simply checking off. And in fact, what I have found, because I have run into these on the internet as well, when people bring them to my attention and I'll look at them, the answers they often put as what they say the correct answer is actually is not correct. I think this is probably how CompTIA determines that you have used one of these sources, that they know what the wrong answers are, and they find that you're putting the same wrong answers as some of these brain dump sites. So my recommendation to you is don't use those sites. There's no single place you can go to find these, but it's once you start really looking at the questions, it becomes relatively obvious that that's the case. Now, for my practice exams, this is probably a good opportunity to mention, these are the 501 practice exams that I wrote. I wrote every question that's in here. All of these questions are original. I know because I wrote all of them. None of them were copied from another source. They are all questions that are ones that, now the style of the question is similar to the style of the way the questions are asked on the exam, because I tried to channel the author and to present the same voice as the actual exam might provide to you. So the style of the questions has the same pentameter, the same format as what you would expect to find on the exam. But the question is completely different than anything you would find on the exam, because that's the way it's supposed to work. That's what I do with the 501. Same thing with the 601. 601 slightly different in style. The 601 exam has a little bit of a different approach to the questions. Not dramatically different, but slightly different than the 501 exam. So my 601 questions, I'm going back and modifying how these questions are asked on the 601 practice exams. So that's, I think, where you're ever in a position where you are really trying to get a good set of questions, go to legitimate sources for your questions. Don't get them off the internet on random sites. You will simply run into that all the time. I think you are right to rethink that this doesn't look right. This doesn't seem to be something I should be using for my studies. And you're absolutely right. It isn't. It's not an appropriate way. You don't learn anything. You're getting a certification that has no value to you, certainly. And at the end of the day, you need to be able to do your job once you get that job. And if you don't know the material, how are you supposed to do that? So that's my recommendation to you, is to find some questions and answers, but find them from sources that you know to be legitimate, and I think you'll be fine. So I appreciate the call. That's always a challenge to find good materials, isn't it? And that's, I think, the concern here. That's why I work so hard to make sure my materials are of a quality and a standard and a legitimacy, because what good is it just to distribute actual exam materials? It makes no sense whatsoever to be able to do that. In the chat room, $50 from Dinka. I think that's how you would say that. What a nice donation. And thank you. You received your A+ certification last Wednesday, 100% due to Professor Messer's YouTube videos. Not exactly how I recommend people do it, but I built the course so that it would cover every single exam objective. And for people that study better from videos, why not be able to use a comprehensive course to be able to do that? Congratulations on your new A+ certifications. And now you're using the same materials or the Network Plus materials to prepare for Network Plus. Congratulations to be able to do that. Great certification to have in your pocket, by the way. So it's got to feel good to have that A+ certification done last Wednesday, because you've had to go through 2 exams to get to that point. So congratulations there. In a way, Network Plus might be a little bit easier. It's only 1 exam that you have to study for. So maybe that will help you a little bit. For those of you keeping track of Network Plus, and here's my recommendation, I think we'll probably see the INTEN 008 released in September. That was the date that they talked about in October of last year. So that's about the time frame I would probably expect that to be available. And the rumors, or what people are saying on the support lines from CompTIA, is that the existing Network Plus is still going to be around into June of 2022. So to your point, if you're studying right now for your Network Plus, that's the version you should be studying. So absolutely do that. Study using those materials. Take your Intent 007. Heck, if you start studying now for Network Plus, you'll already be Network Plus certified before the new version is even released. That's how far down the road we're talking about. So that's the key, is finding those things. I think that makes sense. In the chat room, Bob's asked, can we see some phishing emails from my spam box? Well, on the video I did on spam, I literally pulled those emails into that video minutes before making the video. So I just grabbed whatever spam was in my inbox and put it there. A lot of the spam that's in my spam folder is probably things that are inappropriate anyway. Spammers aren't real good with knowing what is safe for work or not. So instead of looking without any type of uncontrolled views into my mailbox, I think it's better if you just go back and look at that spam piece. Maybe I'll start collecting some interesting spam and just start publishing it. Here's my interesting spam of the week, and see if we can find some of those things. This last week, the more interesting things I thought were with the pipeline shutdown and what was happening with the pipeline shutdown. And we've been sort of watching this here at Messer Studios. It's hard because there's not a lot of information. What I found interesting about this pipeline issue that we had was the people that were behind the pipeline infection were not necessarily the people that created the ransomware. I don't think a lot of people realize that the Colonial Pipeline infection was done by ransomware as a service. It was a cloud service. So the people that made the ransomware are very good at making ransomware. And they tell other people, we're not good at hacking into places, but if you can hack into a place and get the ransomware on those systems, we will give you a percentage of the profit. This is the organization DarkSide that was behind the ransomware. So the people that actually infected the systems, and we still aren't quite certain yet if the systems were on the company side or if they ever got into the industrial control systems or not. But the folks that put the infection in their network may not be DarkSide. That may be somebody completely different, and probably was. Obviously, DarkSide, it was kind of a double. The way they do ransomware these days is not just to put your systems into an encrypted form, but they take your data and then they also say that we're going to release your data publicly on the internet. So it's a double whammy. Like, you have to pay them not to publish your data, and you have to pay them to get the decryption key. And that's why there's stories mentioning that Colonial paid $5 million to DarkSide to be able to prevent the publishing of their data and to get the decryption keys. And quite interesting what happened with that. We don't know a lot of details about the ransomware specifically and what the exact infected type of ransomware was. We don't know what flavor was put on the systems. But it was also right after that happened, and they had to shut down everything. What we believe is they were infected on the corporate side, and they shut down to prevent an infection of the industrial control systems. But even then, we don't know that was the case. We're just speculating based on the articles that we have out there. And of course, most of those articles are wrong anyway, as I've mentioned earlier. But what I thought was great about it was they immediately, on the DarkSide, immediately put out a statement that said, okay, we didn't mean to bring down the pipeline. We didn't mean to bring an entire country's fuel supply to its knees and cause outages and cause problems with fuel supply. That wasn't our intention. Please don't hurt us, was effectively what that meant. Because I don't know if you've noticed anything about the oil companies and oil in general, but it tends to start wars. There tends to be a lot of very powerful people who will come after you if you mess around with that. And certainly they felt some of that pressure. And as some of you noticed, about a day after they put that notice out, all of their servers were gone. All of their DNS entries were deleted. Everything disappeared on the dark side. All of their, where we believe their cryptocurrency was gone. Where their web server, gone. Anything they had was suddenly removed from the internet. How that happened was that a governmental entity? Was it a private entity? Whoever did it removed DarkSide from everything there was in the internet. Maybe DarkSide did it. Maybe they took everything down. They just felt the pressure. We don't know. But they'll, of course, rebuild as the next big thing. Whatever the next thing will be, DarkSide 2 will be the next one coming up, and we'll have more ransomware as a service. It's just another phase along the lines. At this point, there's no more news about it. The only media I've seen about it recently in recent days was that aren't we badly positioned for ransomware? Everybody's complaining that we aren't covered for cybersecurity in this country, which is a statement only a politician or someone in journalism could ever make, because you're just completely oblivious to what we do in this country regarding cybersecurity and the type of experts we have in cybersecurity in this country. So that's just ignorance, but that's okay. We would expect that from published. People need clicks. That's the only way that people make money on the internet, is for people to click on things. And having an article that is it gets people riled up or gets them excited or angry is a very common way to get clicks. But we know in IT security, and the people that are familiar with what we do in this industry, is that we are well positioned. This particular company was not well positioned for whatever reason. And of course, some of you that have been looking at job postings, you'll notice that there was a job posting for an IT security director for that. And I agree, Captain Crunky Key 23 in the chat room, you are correct. Brian Krebs on KrebsOnSecurity.com had great coverage on this, and he will continue. He's one of the best places to go for tell me what's really going on out there. I think that's the great thing, is we got plenty of places to go to that do have good coverage. Brian Krebs is probably he is the one outside the scope. I always tell you that if it's in an article online, it's probably wrong, unless it's someone who does this. If it's a security blog, if it is a Brian Krebs, if it's somebody in the industry, like one of us, then it's going to be relatively accurate. You're going to really have good information. When it's Vox, they try. When it's, other news sources, they try really hard to get it right, but they can't. There's just no way they can get it accurate. They are not technologists. We would not expect them to get it 100% correct. They get close, but for those of us in the industry that really need the actual, really what's going on there, you really have to go to Krebs on Security and other specific sites. The others are just kind of trying to keep people up to date with what's going on. And that's why I always have people in my family call me and say, did you hear they have a, no, they don't. Whatever you read there is not true. That's not what happened. So you kind of have to temper the family members with what the reality is and what maybe speculation is and what we really sort of have found out behind the scenes. We're probably not going to know much more about Colonial and what happened there. I don't know if we ever will. They may not tell us anything, or they might give us a little bit of an overview just because it was so public. But don't ever let, what's the rule in politics? Don't ever let a good crisis go to waste. So that was a really good crisis. So now we get to see everything else that happens behind the scenes. Is now they're gonna create their own reality of those things. We're going to try to focus on the bits and bytes. We're going to try to focus on what really happened there and try to piece together. And the politics and everything else is going to happen anyway behind the scenes or in front of us, as the case may be. But whatever happens, we are going to focus here, at least in this room. I try to focus on what really happened there. We'll let the politics deal with itself. There's plenty of other sites you can go to to argue about the politics side. Let's figure out, how did they get on the network? What did it really do? How did that malware operate? What information do we think was sent out? How did they manage to get those servers taken down? That's what I'm more interested in. I'm more interested in the bits and bytes. How did they make that work? I want to pull the engine apart. I want to see what's inside that carburetor. And that's what I like doing, is to have that. To that point, if your organization doesn't have a policy or a set of processes in place for completely removing a system from the network and rebuilding it easily, then you are at risk. And that is the thing that I think everybody should be thinking about. That's our takeaway from this, even knowing nothing else about this scenario. Do you have a way, if your system got ransomware right now, as we are talking, your system where bloop, the message came up, said everything here has been deleted, and now you have to rebuild the system. Could you do it? And how quickly could you do it? You know, that's the important part. Now, there's another challenge there. If they get your data, they're probably going to threaten you with putting that data on the internet. You have to pay them not to publish your data. That's a completely different thing we have to worry about. But in the meantime, do we have a way to recover so that our pipeline doesn't stop? And that's the important part of this. It's always your best bet whenever you get infected is you burn everything to the ground and you rebuild from scratch. Always. Now, I know for those of you that took the A+, that you know there is a process for recovering malware. You go through the process of removing it from the network, and then you disable the backup systems. And then you go through and update antivirus. Then you remove the virus. Then you turn everything back on. Well, that's if you have to get data off the machine. But once you finish all that, then you delete everything. You rebuild it from scratch or Nonga backup. That is the only way you would be 100% sure that you were able to remove every part of that malware from your network. So everybody that you read about in the news who has been infected with one of these types of situations, they have to delete everything and they have to rebuild everything back. So this is a relatively big undertaking. So it's not something that happens overnight in some cases. Or maybe it can if you have the right processes in place. What if you have the right processes where you have offline backups and you could delete everything on a floor, click a button, and have everything rebuild itself automatically? Those systems exist. The way to do that exists. Do you have that process in place? And if you don't have it in place at work, do you have it in place at home? You have things on your computer right now that are very valuable to you. There are pictures, there is documents, there's all kinds of information. So make sure you have backups. You have a backup of the backup. You have an offline version of the backup so that if this machine's infected, it can't touch that backup system. Those are things to think about. Maybe some of it's in the cloud. Maybe if some of it's local. You get to decide what makes sense for you. But I would definitely recommend that. Question in the chat room. Has the 601 replaced the 501? Well, we're currently in an overlap period where both the 601 and the 501 exist at the same time. But the 501 will retire on July 31st, and the 601 will continue after that. So it has not technically not replaced it yet. It is both of them exist at the same time currently, which is just for fun on this side, because there's constant confusion about which one do I take? Do I take the one? Do I not take the one? Would I still recommend taking the 501 test? That's the logical next question. You have 2.5 months, just under 2.5 months. Can you get through all of the Security Plus materials in 2.5 months? You might be able to. It's cutting it very close, but you possibly could at this point. It takes me about 5 to 6 months, let's say 4 to 6 months to study for an exam. For me, because I got other stuff going on. I got a job. I got things happening at home. I got responsibilities. I got life. And it takes me about 4 to 6 months to study for a certification exam. If we sit here today on May 19th and I'm trying to decide which one do I take, the 501 or 601, I study for the 601 because there's no way I'm going to make the deadline for the 501. Plus, I don't do well under that level of pressure. Don't put me in a corner. Don't do that. Don't tell me, oh, this needs to be done next week. This needs to be done by July 31st. Okay, that's not going to happen. Don't give me a deadline. It's only setting yourself up for disappointment. That's all that is. Thank you for your deadline. I hope you don't realize that I care what that deadline is, because I don't. I can't. I will finish it as soon as I possibly can. Whenever that is, I don't know. That's why you'll notice I never set deadlines for the release of my videos. I never set deadlines for the release of my books, because all it will do is ultimately create a product that is of less quality, because I'm pushing towards a date. Why don't I make the best possible product I can, and then when I'm done with it, I release it? That's crazy, but that's what I do. But when I'm the only one having to worry about it, I can do that. That's one of the huge advantages I have as a publisher, is that I get to do that. That's my way of publishing. I don't have to deal with a third party. I'm not focused on any particular date. I just create it, make it as good as I can make it. If I need to spend an extra day making it a little bit better, I spend an extra day making it a little bit better. So that's it. Yeah, I guess these shows, these study groups are the only deadline I really have, which is we're going to do a study group on Wednesday. But I have such a lead time. I know it's coming, and it takes me half a day to prepare for these. So that's the part where I worry about. So I have to spend that half a day creating the questions and answers for this. And then once I do that, I'm done. Then we're ready. And I usually do that on the weekend. So it's not a hard one to do. I've already blocked out the time. So it's not really a deadline. It's really, you're just preparing for the normal things you're doing in your job. So I think that's the key. I know game developers don't even come close to doing that, do they? They pick a day, the manager picks a day, and then drives the developers to releasing the product on that day. Is it ready on that day? No. Will they publish on that day? Yeah. Yes, they will. So I don't work that way. I'm glad I'm not a publisher. I am a game publisher anyway. I focus on, because I don't know. I'm looking at the 501 practice exams. I need to create a set of 601 practice exams. Some of these questions will be in the 601 book, although they will probably be modified to fit the 601 style, but only half of this will. So I got to write another half of this book. That's a thick book. So I got to write that much. Well, how long is it going to take me to write that much? I don't know. A week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 months? I don't know. Based on, I've already got a third of it done, and that went relatively quick. The second third is going to take a little bit longer. So maybe in a month we'll be done with this and it'll be out. Maybe it won't be. We just don't know. So I don't set dates, because all it does is create an expectation and ultimately disappointment. That's all that does. That's the real key. Is the 601 an easier exam and more promising to its objectives than the 501? I don't know what that means, but I don't think it's an easier exam. I think it's just as difficult as the 501 exam. And it stays it is as close. The 501 stays very close to the exam objectives. The 601 stays very close to the exam objectives. They don't really deviate from the objectives on these exams, thankfully. So it's not that it is easier or harder of an exam to take. I think the exams are comparable, except the 601 is so much more information. It's a lot more information. And the scope, I guess I'm not getting that across. So let me pull up the list of just how much information this happens to be. So on the 601 objectives, just so we can talk real numbers, on the 501 exam, if you were to count up the number of objectives on the exam, there are 778 objectives on the 501 exam. It's almost 800 objectives. 800 things you need to know for the 501. Oh, but wait. On the 601, 1,038 objectives for a 33.42% increase. So it's a third larger. That's a big, huge number. So you're talking 300, 200 and something more objectives that you have to know. That's a lot more to study. And that's why it's a harder exam to study for. The actual study part is easy to do that. Now, here's the challenge. On the 601 exam, 1,038 objectives, 529 of them are brand new. 51% of the exam is brand new to the 601. So it's practically a new certification exam. At least half of it is brand new. But what I found is that it's not entirely new sections. What they've done is add additional content to the existing topics because security did not change in 3 years. People keep telling me it's so different now. It's not. It's not different at all. We still have the cloud. We still have ransomware. We still have these same technologies. It's not like we suddenly came up with a whole brand new set of security issues. The focus on the exam has changed a little bit more. They have a little bit more cloud. They have a little bit more application development. I don't know, but there it is. But things that you have to know for the 601 exam. Is it too much? It is. It's too big. It's too big of an exam, but I think they wanted to fit certain topics in here, and that's what they did. And it's really, really big. It's the biggest single certification exam that that CompTIA makes, certainly one of the largest, and much larger than the 501. So there's your breakdown as far as numbers are concerned, is that it's immense. It's a big exam. So it's still 90 minutes. It's still 90 questions, but they can pull from hundreds more topics that you have to learn to be able to take the exam. And that's why I tell people, if you have the ability, if you've been studying for the 501 and you can take that one, go take it. It's an easier exam to study for, and it's going to be an easier exam to pass. But some of us don't have that luxury. So we just have to study more to get all of those topics down to be able to figure that out. So is that potentially 12 objectives per minute? No, you still get the same number of objectives per minute. You still only have 90 possible questions on the exam, but they could be from a much larger pool. So that's the key. The exam, I think people get confused over that. And some people have said, no, I've heard the 601's easier. Well, I think that the actual test taking process and the complexity of the questions is comparable to the 501. I don't think it's easier or harder than the 501 to take the exam, but you have to know so much more to take the 601. That's what makes it harder. So I think that's where people get a little concerned, is that they aren't taking into account just how big the scope has increased. 33% larger. 33.42% larger. That's big to be able to do that. So that's why I tell people, don't mess around. The 501 was hard already. That's a difficult exam to pass. Now add 200 something more objectives to it. Makes it harder. Is it still 5 performance-based questions? Well, we don't know. It's a handful. It's a certain number of performance-based questions at the beginning. So yes, you get a certain number of performance-based questions at the beginning. It's random for every person. And then the rest of it is multiple choice questions. The format has not changed. The structure has not changed. The process has not changed. The number of questions hasn't changed. The style of the exam has not changed dramatically. But just the scope is much bigger. Scope is much larger to have there. But I think as we get into it, and this will be a conversation that's pointless at the end of July, because at the end of July, it's only the 601 is left. So we'll never have that conversation after that. But I think that's, for those of you studying for your 501, keep doing that. That's my recommendation to you. And if you're trying to figure out which one's harder, go look at the objectives. It'll tell you which one's harder. It's obvious which one's harder. There's no way to make an argument that studying 200 and something more objectives is somehow easier. That's a ridiculous statement, which I've seen. No, it's impossible. Nobody, it was, and this is somebody who made a video. I have video series and every objective was covered. It was a massive video series. This is the biggest video series we ever did. It is massive. And I can't imagine having taken the 501 and seeing the 601, that somebody could look at both of those and say, oh yeah, 601's easier. There's no way. There's no possible way that's the case. Because there's a laws of physics apply, and I have to spend time learning those extra 200 and something objectives. So you can't get away from that. That's always going to be there. And they're not simple objectives. These are complex things to know. And an example, what they're mentioning in the chat room right now, is that there's very few command line utilities that you have to know in the 501. You know, there's traceroute, there's dig, there's netstat, there's those types in the 501. The 601, there's twice as many we have to know. You have to know about the harvester. You have to know about some scanning proxies. You have to understand some OSINT utilities. It's extensive. So there's more hands-on on the 601 than there was in the 501. And the problem, of course, is they don't ask you hands-on questions really about a lot of that on the exam. They ask you how you would use these things. That's one of those challenges. Hopefully you'll be able to look through those exam objectives yourself, become familiar with them, understand what you would run into. And I think that will help you on your exam too. Why can't you buy the hard copy of the 501 notes? Only the 601? I don't know why you can't, because the option's there. It's a button that's right underneath the pricing block where you can switch between digital and physical. Because here's the physical, here's the hard copy. You can buy them right there on the page. The 601 sales page has a tab that moves you between the digital and physical. It makes it so easy. It doesn't work that way on the 501 page yet. I'm working on switching that out, but that's one of those that I got to write a book first, and then we'll switch that out. But there is a button right underneath the price chart where you can switch to the physical version, and purchase those if you need to. It's just not obvious, is it? I didn't do a very good job with that, but I will fix it. It's there. I know nobody saw the option. Very few people see the option because I kind of hid it there underneath the block of pricing. But there's a block. I don't know why I'm saying this. If only there was a way visually I could show you in some way. If only I had some type of video switching system that would bring up the list of these things when we would look at it. This would be really, really helpful. So let me bring that up. You would think that I would have had this all ready to go, everybody. So let's do that. Let's go to my website, and there we go. Let me put my head in the picture. There we go. So 501, let's look at course notes. So when you bring this up, well, thank you, Google, for the advertisement, but I don't need to know about that. So right underneath the pricing chart is this little button that says, looking for a physical edition? Click here. So if you click that, it takes you to a completely different page that doesn't look like a completely different page, which is part of the confusion. It takes you to this page. So now it's the same page, except it's showing you physical edition. So there's the physical course notes and the physical practice exams and the physical exam combo and the physical success bundle. So that's why. I know it is sneaky. I apologize. And right here it says, now that you're on the physical page looking for digital, click here. There's a reason that it happened this way. It's a reason it got built that way. Part of it's is I did a bad job because I'm not that great at building a web page. And the second part is that I came out with the digital products first, and then I added on the physical. Not a great way to do it. If you are buying the 601, it's different because you would go to the 601 page, and you've got a tab here across the top that says digital edition, physical edition. Digital edition. See how easy that is? Why didn't I do that to start with? That's the way it should be done. That makes so. And then I've got other physical things to add to this. I need to add other pieces to that to get that ready. But I'm working on that. We will get there. Look at that fella. What's going on there? So that's why. I apologize that it's a mess, but that's how I build a website. That's how I do things. Is not very well, but I'm getting there. I'm figuring out based on your feedback to me, which is constant and directed. I do make changes, and I don't take it personally. So over the years, there's practically nothing that you can tell me on the internet that I take personally. So practically everything you give me, whether it's done in a good or bad way, there's a little bit of truth in there. And I try to take the truth out of it and make things better. That's all you can do. And then I delete the email and I forget about you. So that's a learned process over time. So in the chat room, quick question. What's easier, the 501 or 601? Thanks for joining us. You'll want to rewind about 20 minutes and you'll get that. And people also here are saying, I've been getting this ad pop up on the website. Was that supposed to happen? You saw one come up when I was here on my website. That is supposed to happen. It's a new style of advertisement from Google. You'll probably see it on other websites as well. It's called a Google vignette. And it is, no, don't use ad block. That is not what you should do. On my site, you should create an ad block exception for professormesser.com. And then you simply close those when they show up on your screen. That's what you're supposed to do. And those are normal. They're not, you aren't infected with malware. And you'll even see at the top, it has Google vignette in the top of that page. Maybe I can find another one. Maybe I can just go around my website and we'll see if I can get it to pop one of those up for you. Because it turns out to be just another way that Google can provide advertising, and a lot of what we do to keep things going, because all of our videos are free, I have to stick some type of advertising on there. So that's why you'll see those things pop up. I wish there was some way that I could make free videos, but somehow not have the advertising piece of it there. Why should you only use ad block on my website? No, you should use ad block on every website but mine. That was my intention of telling you my site should be an exception to your ad block. That's okay. Now you're with it. I think you're joshing me. I think you're spoofing me. It is a way that we support what we do here. The advertising, every little thing we do sort of helps. There's no one big thing that I can point to keep going there. But I realize advertising on a website is annoying, and you'll notice I've been making some changes to the website recently. There are fewer ads on my site than there have ever been. So I am sensitive to this as well. I wish I didn't have to have any, and maybe someday we'll get to that where we don't have to have any advertising on the website whatsoever. But right now it really helps keep things going. I can keep Lori working for the company. I can do things and make plans with this. You keep the lights on, you keep all of these things happening. So unfortunately, it's just one of those, that's our model. If I got rid of those ads, I'd have to have other ads doing different things. And I don't. You don't ever hear me doing a live read on a video for a VPN company. You'll never see me, or at least you haven't seen me doing any live reads for apps and games you can have on your mobile device. I try to stay away from that. I try to make the advertising as relatively low-key as possible. Low-key? No, low-key as possible. So yes, no, I didn't say the name, and people in the chat room are going, oh yeah, I know what game you're talking about. That one? No, that's why I don't do it. They must pay really well though, by the way, because I see them on some big name sites on big videos. They must pay really good, or maybe the other people are just needing that revenue. Fortunately, we're doing okay here. You are watching the videos. What you're doing is working, so we're going to keep going that. That's the important thing here. Does Lori have her Security Plus? She doesn't. Thanks for asking. She does not yet have her Security Plus, but she doesn't write the content. I give her things to post and she posts it. So she relies on me as the Security Plus content creator, and then I rely on her to make sure you see it. It's a good combination, I think. So we'll go that way. Since we're getting into sort of the last parts of this, other questions in the chat room. What games do I play on Xbox? This is, of course, I mentioned this on earlier study groups, is that in my off time, I try to get out of this room, and I don't tend to do gaming on my computer, even though I think there are better games for the PC and Mac platform. I wouldn't say better, but more detailed, feature-rich games on that platform. I just don't want to be in here. I just don't want to be in here this long. I want to go lean back when I do my gaming. So I want to get in a big comfy chair and just do something relatively straightforward with my friends online and shoot at people. So that's what games do I play right now? Not many. We are in a time where I'm creating content. I'm creating these course notes and practice exams and videos. So my spare time tends to be very cyclical, where if I'm putting one of these things together, I'm working all day and all night on finishing this up. Because as soon as I do that, now I can go do other things at night. I can do some of this during the day, but it's very cyclical where you want me to get this book done as quickly as possible as well. And I want to get it done as quickly as possible, so I just don't game right now. But when that's over, I'll probably get back into Division 2 or Elite Dangerous or something that has some depth to it, some challenge and options that I can really work with. I like the RPG sort of idea because you can really start theory crafting things. I love the theory crafting side of it. I like optimization of skills / weapons / things. I like that. And sort of customizing it to your own way of playing. I'm not much into the Rocket League or short term. You play a game, it's 5 minutes long and then you're out. Or in my case, especially if it's one where you play until you die, I'm in for 30 seconds and then I'm done. So that's my problem. I'm not that person either. Real challenge to make that happen. And some people are mentioning entering the field of IT in the chat room. In IT, finding what people want you to have, and most of the time that's the A+. The A+ tends to be the entry point into information technology. Whether an employer is specifically asking for it or you need the knowledge that it brings, that's a good place to start. So I think that's what you want to do, is be that first foray into IT. I think A+ is a good way to get there. There are other options out there. Microsoft has some entry-level certs. Really, they're the other big player in entry-level. It's Microsoft and CompTIA, and CompTIA tends to have the market. It's much more well-known and much more accepted. So I think that's the way to go for those two things. The quick answer for those of you asking is 501 or 601 easier. 501 is, except it retires on July 31st, which means you may have to go with 601. There's no one answer. This overlap period is always a challenge. It's a timing issue, isn't it? We got to figure out for these. Yeah, I don't really do chess. I like chess, but just no. I like to have an involved game with lots of moving parts and pieces. Complexity. I like the complexity. I like it to be something I can sit on the Xbox and do. I've been trying to get my hands on the newest Xbox since November. They're just not available. That's my next big thing. I used to do a lot of WoW. Don't do much WoW anymore because it involves sitting in front of the computer. I don't do that. If maybe later on I can find a way to sit back in a different room and do it differently. But that's the real challenge with gaming right now, is I just don't have time to work through it. I have been looking at the Wi-Fi Frag vulnerabilities, some of which are relatively esoteric and not something we have to worry about. Others may involve a little bit of tweaking to the standard, but it doesn't look like it's something that is an enormous issue at the moment for most operating systems, especially if you stay up to date. It's going to be a real concern for people who don't update and upgrade and get security patches, certainly. That's the key, I think, for staying on top of that one. But I don't think everybody understands the full scope of the Wi-Fi Frag either. I guess it depends on what the bad guys are able to do with it. We're all very concerned about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is always an issue in every organization. So staying on top of that one's going to be interesting. I need to do more reading up on the paper that they released because it was some pretty good stuff. If you have a chance to read through some of the Wi-Fi Frag, the technology behind it's remarkable. What they were able to do with the standard and the holes that they found were great. But as we find with many things related to security, much of the Wi-Fi Frag issue is as much an implementation problem as it is a problem with the standard. So if you have a standard but you implement it incorrectly, then you have made something less secure. We see this all the time with cryptography. And that's one of the things. Now, there's parts of the Wi-Fi Frag that clearly are their standard issue. We have to change the standard. We have to fix the standard to really fix the problem. And I think what we may find is some companies will tweak their drivers a bit to prevent those types of things from happening, even though they go outside the scope of the standard. We'll see if that's what happens. I think that's going to be pretty easy to find people doing that and keeping things safe, because we use Wi-Fi so much and how those things work. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group. We've got a lot of things we went through this time. I want to thank you for being here in this first hour where I did the Q&A. And then this really the second and third hour was all about questions from the chat room. It always gets good there near the end because we get off topic, and I kind of like doing the off topic questions sometimes a little bit more than some of the others. As they mentioned in the chat room, 73 days until the Security Plus 501 expires. Thank you for that countdown. That's not a lot of time. If you're studying, just starting today for Security Plus, you may want to look at going with the 601 instead, unless you're really planning to jump into it and finish it up before it goes away. There will be people taking the 501 certification exam on the last day it's offered. There always is. I would not recommend doing that. I would recommend really shooting well beyond that. And 601 may be that point. This may be the point where we really start saying, go take the 601. I think that's probably going to position everybody from worrying about when it happens. I think that's the good one to think about. So hopefully that will get you going in the right direction, or at least get you thinking about what direction you would like to go. I want to see you earn that Security Plus certification. Whatever we can do on this side to get you to that goal, we're going to do it. We'll be back next month with another Security Plus study group. There will probably, hopefully by then, maybe be a practice exam book available. The course notes are already available on the website. Your support has been tremendous. Thank you so much through this entire process. We're more than happy to make these 601 videos available to you. We're so glad that process is complete. Go use them. Go earn that Security Plus certification. Get it in your pocket and go get that Security Plus job. Thanks for being here. And we'll see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.